Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to part 4 of What If I Was Reincarnated in the Naruto universe as the Uchiha's Genjutsu Demon. Let the tale begin. Chapter 91, Meeting Zabuza and Haku. Huh? Kakashi said as he had one hand in the air and was about to say start. Even the others who were so excited to see the fight didn't understand what just happened. 1 second Yami was standing in front of 6 Narutos and the next second Naruto was on the ground and Yami was standing behind him. Only Kakashi, Neji, and Sasuke were able to follow that speed. Mom, what just happened? Inari asked, seeing the unconscious Naruto. Tsunami just shrugged and then looked at Sakura for an answer, who was still in shock. She didn't even understand that Yami hit Naruto. According to her, Naruto just fell down. I thought seeing Naruto and Yami fight others would get encouraged, but Yami didn't even give him a chance. Kakashi thought. Now he regretted telling Yami to finish it fast. He wanted Naruto to stop his overdependence on shadow clones and focus on actual combat. Yami looked at the people around him. He saw some confused, some impressed, and 2 people tightening their fists. These 2 people were Neji and Sasuke. Seeing how Yami defeated Naruto, both of them understood that they are still a long way from defeating him. I need to ask the patriarch and grandfather to teach me some jutsu, or else he will leave me in the dust. The day our squad was going to be announced, I wished that I wouldn't get a team that would hold me back, but now it feels that I may become the weakling that will hold Yami back. Neji thought. Sasuke, on the other hand, was feeling a little guilty. Did I just feel jealousy against my own little brother? Am I going to become like that man and one day kill my own blood? And no matter how strong Yami gets, I am nothing but proud of him. Sasuke thought. Yami looked at Sasuke and said, I am going a little deeper in the jungle. I'll be back in an hour or 2. Huh, oh okay. Sasuke said in a daze. Yami left the open space and headed deep into the forest. Right now, when the fight was about to start, he sensed some movement in the forest. At first, he thought it was just an animal or just a strong wind. But he still wanted to check it out. Back at the training ground, Inari and Tsunami were waiting for Sakura to answer while Sakura was looking at Kakashi and Sasuke. Sasuke sighed and said Yami found who the real Naruto is and appeared behind him, delivering a blow on the neck, making him unconscious. When the real loses consciousness, then the clones also dissipate. But how did he know who the real one is? Sakura asked, to which Sasuke shrugged. Sasuke, Sakura, both of you stop thinking about it. Yami must have had a method to find that. Get back to your training while I tend to Naruto. Kakashi said as he went to pick up the unconscious Naruto. While all this was happening, Yami was heading toward the sound he was hearing. As he reached close, he saw Haku with a basket of flowers in his hand sitting under a tree, while the white tape-covered Zabuza was sitting on top of a boulder. Haku doesn't have a mind of his own. Talking to him won't have any effect. As for Zabuza, he won't listen to me unless I prove to him that he stands no chance against me. I hate to do things by using force, but some people are so simple-minded that force is the only language they understand. Yami thought. He didn't have his sword, but he preferred to keep the entire thing as quiet as possible. I just hope Neji doesn't look in this direction with his Byakugan. Yami thought as he jumped down from the tree. Zabuza, who saw someone jump down in front of him at some distance, took a fighting stance. Haku also dropped his basket and held a few Senbon needles in his hand. Who are you? Haku asked. Without looking at Haku, Zabuza said he is a hidden leash shinobi. Don't you see that headband, Haku? Not waiting for the both of them to keep talking, Yami activated his Sharingan. Seeing this, Zabuza quickly said, that kid with Kakashi had eyes like you. Kid, are you one of those overconfident kids who think they can take on people just because academies call them a genius? Zabuza said with a snicker. I have an offer for you, Yami said in a cold tone. He wasn't interested in bickering with Zabuza. But Zabuza wasn't going to keep listening to a kid, so he rushed toward Yami to cut his head off in one move. He didn't even feel the need to spread the mist as he had done for Kakashi and the others. Just when the sword was a meter away from Yami, he sidestepped, dodging the slash. Zabuza wanted to take another swing, but Yami hit a chop on his wrist, making Zabuza's grip on the sword loose. Yami then held the sword from the hole in the sword and snatched it from Zabuza. Zabuza had never expected a 9-year-old kid to take away his sword as if an adult was snatching a toy. He took time to react because he couldn't even process this happening. Yami then kicked Zabuza in the stomach, making him fly back to where Haku was standing. As Zabuza fell down, he groaned, and hearing this, Haku quickly ran to him and crouched down. "Zabuza, are you alright?" Haku said while checking his injuries. "Arg, I am fine." "Who the hell is this kid?" Zabuza said as he stood up and looked at the red-eyed Yami. He saw Yami had his sword. For Zabuza, who was one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, his sword was his identity, and now it was gone. He had no idea how he was going to fight without a sword. "You can't fight without your sword, and if Haku tries to attack me, you know what will happen to him," Yami said with a small smile on his face. That smile looks so innocent, but it feels like the devil is looking at you. Even with his Kekai Jinkai, Haku won't survive a few seconds against him. Zabuza weighed his options. Chapter 92, Deal with Zabuza. While Zabuza was thinking about what to do, Haku stood in front of Zabuza with his Senbon needles in hand and said, "Zabuza, you run. I will stall this guy here." Yami shrugged and said, "Zabuza, why don't you try what Haku said? I would also like to know how far you go. I will play with Haku for a few seconds and then catch you." Zabuza sighed, pushed Haku behind him facing Yami, and said, "I am ready to make a deal, but I have one condition." Yami smiled and said, "What would that be?" Zabuza hesitated and said, "I want my sword back." "But I never took it," Yami said, showing both his hands, which were empty. "Wah," Zabuza was about to say when he noticed that the sword was in his own hand. He then looked back and saw Haku had a basket in his hand and was unconscious under a tree. Zabuza could see that Haku was breathing, which means he isn't dead. He looked back at Yami and asked, "What is happening?" He then touched his own torso and noticed he didn't have any bruise where Yami hit him, nor did he feel any pain. His eyes widened as realization dawned on him. All that was an illusion? Yami smirked and said, "Yes, but I can make that illusion a reality very easily. Do you want to give it a try? Or do you want to talk about the deal? He knocked out Haku without me even knowing and put me in a Genjutsu without even doing anything. Those red eyes seem scarier than before now. I don't think I have any way of getting out of this by fighting him." Zabuza thought. "Tell me about the deal. I don't think I have much of a choice here," Zabuza said. In his mind, he was practically screaming. Even in the hidden mist, he never had been tamed like this by anyone, and now here a 9-year-old was toying with him. But he wasn't foolish enough to believe that this kid won't kill him. For now, forsake the mission given by Gato. Let him attack the bridge builder by himself with his goons. When he dies, I want you to go and finish off the rest of his men and collect all his wealth," Yami said. Zabuza nodded and asked, "How are you sure that Gato and his men will die? He has more than 50 of them." "I don't remember," Yami said. "Remember what?" Zabuza asked in a confused expression on his face. The smile on Yami's face disappeared instantly as he looked at Zabuza with his Sharingan. "I don't remember when I asked for your opinion on my plan. If I said he and the men he brings will die, they will die." Zabuza flinched when he heard that. Hearing this, Zabuza understood that this wasn't a negotiation but a simple order, and he had no say in it. All he had to do was say yes and do it. He hated being controlled by it, but he knew that he was helpless. He grit his teeth and asked, "How and when do you want me to deliver that wealth to you?" Yami waved his hand and said, "I don't need it. Arrange a way to give half of it to the bridge builder in small amounts. You can keep the other half." "What? He wants me to take the other half?" Zabuza thought as he heard what Yami just said. "Then what do you want me to do for you?" Zabuza asked in a confused tone. Yami shook his head and said, "For the next 2 to 3 years lay low and keep increasing your strength. You both are too weak to be of any use to me. Keep your sword in a scroll so that no one recognizes you and train with a normal sword. and lose those bandages. The sword and bandages are enough for anyone to know who you are. Huh? You want me to hide in plain sight by removing my bandages and using a normal sword? And keep doing that until me and Haku become strong enough to do anything for you? Zabuza was getting more and more confused every passing second. Yami was getting bored now. It was too tiring for him to talk to an idiot. Yes, that's what I want you to do. What if I take the money and leave? How will you know that I won't betray you? Zabuza asked. I have a solution for that, Yami said and raised his hands a little. Zabuza didn't understand what was going on, but then he saw a red-eyed black bat come out of Yami's sleeve. The bat flew towards Zabuza and then pierced its nails in Zabuza's chest. Zabuza felt a little pain, but it was nothing for a veteran fighter like him. The bat then changed into a tattoo and imprinted itself on the chest. This tattoo will let me know of your location, and if you ever try to betray me, it will poison you. When you need to contact me, write it in a scroll and insert chakra into the tattoo directly. The bat will appear and then you can tie the scroll to its legs. I will contact you the same way. But if you misbehave, then don't think I will hesitate to kill Haku. You may act like it, but you do care about him. And I assure you I will make you watch helplessly as Haku meets a fate far terrible than death. Yami said. Yami then turned around to leave, but Zabuza stopped him. Wait. Yami looked back and asked, what is it? You didn't even wait for my answer. Yami chuckled and said, you never had any option. And what's wrong with trying to live peacefully for a few years? Maybe you will even take a liking to it and become human from the monster you now are. Zabuza's gaze turned soft for a second as he muttered human and looked at Haku, who was peacefully lying down. He then turned back to look at Yami, but he was already gone. Chapter 93, Become Unrivaled. After Yami left, Zabuza was still thinking about what happened in the past 5 minutes. He still wasn't ready to accept the fact that he became the henchman of a 9-year-old kid. He put all that in the back of his mind as he saw that Haku had started regaining consciousness. What happened? Haku asked while looking around. Nothing much. You just fell asleep, Zabuza replied. He didn't know whether Haku remembers being knocked out or not, but he doesn't want Haku to be worried. Oh, I am sorry. Do we have to go to Gato now? I think you should wait to heal all your injuries, Haku said hesitantly. Zabuza nodded and said, I don't plan on fighting those leech shinobis again. We'll let Gato handle it. Haku was ecstatic when he heard this and quickly said, that's great. Let's go to our usual hideout deep in the forest. We already have enough food for a day or two there. Yes, but I will need to come back to the city only to see what Gato will do now that we won't be doing his dirty work, Zabuza said, and along with Haku walked deep into the forest. Yami was running to a place a little farther than where the others were. He wanted to practice the scroll Asuma gave him, but he didn't want others to see him doing it. He knew that all those present in the beatdown will eventually tell Sasuke and others about the fight, but Yami planned to do something extra with this technique Asuma gave. When he thought he was far enough, he stopped and sat under a tree. Due to the chakra core inside his body, he doesn't even remember the last time he got tired. He opened the scroll given by Asuma and started reading it. The only thing he knew about it was that Asuma had told Naruto to grind wind chakra against each other. This let Yami apply a sharp edge to the kunai, but when thrown, the chakra on the kunai would dissipate. Now, after reading the scroll, he understood the next steps as well. He continued to practice it. At first, he was facing the same problem, but slowly the dissipation of chakra reduced. The kunai would penetrate the thick tree but wouldn't go through. Yami remembered that in the canon, Asuma was not only able to pierce the tree but also damaged the boulder behind it. Looks like I need to keep practicing for a few more hours, Yami sighed. Back at the open area near the lake, Kakashi was training with Sasuke, Sakura was practicing her chakra control and also talking with Inari and Tsunami, and Neji was training his gentle fist. He had the techniques of his clan, so he didn't need anyone other than Hayashi or his grandfather. It has been more than half an hour since Yami left. While Sakura was talking with Tsunami, Inari suddenly shouted, "Look, Naruto is waking up. Everyone looked at Inari first and then, in the direction he was pointing in, they saw Naruto slowly gaining consciousness. They all stopped their training and went near him. "Ow, what happened to me?" Naruto asked, massaging his shoulder. He was feeling a little pain where Yami hit him. He then looked up and saw everyone was staring at him. "Hey guys, why are you looking at me like that?" Naruto asked everyone, including Inari. Kakashi walked ahead and asked Naruto, "What's the last thing you remember?" Naruto started thinking as he said, "The last thing, oh yes, I challenged Yami to a fight." "And then what happened?" Tsunami asked. She herself couldn't follow Yami's speed, so she was curious. Naruto tried to remember for a few more seconds when he suddenly said, "I remember that I created some clones and got mixed up among them to confuse Yami, but then he suddenly disappeared and then I felt everything go blur and my eyes closed." Kakashi didn't want Naruto and the others to think about this more than they already do, so he told Naruto to go back home with Inari and Tsunami. The others continued to practice as usual. After a few hours, Kakashi looked at Neji and Sasuke and asked, "We should get going now. Should we wait for Yami?" Sasuke didn't know much about Yami outside the house, so he looked at Neji. Neji shook his head and said, "No need. As far as I know, Yami, he must have left one of his summons to keep an eye on the surroundings, so if we leave he will know it. We can just go home and he will come when he finishes his training. Is he alert for some specific reason, or is it only to guard Tazuna and his family?" Kakashi wondered after listening to Neji. The group decided to leave and go home. It was almost time for Guy, Lee, and Tazuna to come back from the bridge. They also had to decide who will go to collect information about Gato and his men. It was almost evening, and in the middle of the forest 10 to 20 trees were on the ground in a destroyed state. The boulders had numerous cracks and holes in them, and some even had a hole straight through it. In the middle of all this destruction, one kid could be seen sitting in a lotus position. This kid was none other than Yami. He was sweating profusely, and even his clothes had stuck to his body, being soaked in his sweat. "This has been the first time that I had to utilize my chakra core. But using it felt like moving a machine which hadn't been used for a long time. I need to keep circulating my chakra through the core, and the only technique that I can learn which expends so much chakra is probably a scorch style. My Genjutsu sure is strong, but I can't put people like Madara, Nagato, and people of the Otsutsuki clan in a Genjutsu. I need something like scorch style to become unrivaled." No one would have been afraid of Wood style until Hashirama himself explored it to the fullest extent. I can't even imagine the amount of damage that can be done when Wood style jutsu like the 1,000 Buddha hands aren't of wood but scorching heat that instantly evaporating the water content from anything it touches. Chapter 94, The First Change. Yami had pride in his mastery of Genjutsu, but he wasn't stubborn enough to believe that he could win the war with only Genjutsu. Like every jutsu and technique in this world, Genjutsu had its own limitations. He had expectations from the last scroll that Kurenai had, but she said that he wasn't old enough to open it. The biggest flaw of Genjutsu was that no matter how good Yami's Genjutsu is, it can be broken if someone inserts their own chakra into the victim and breaks the Genjutsu. Only Genjutsus like the Tsukuyomi are able to bypass it because the Tsukuyomi takes only 1 second in real life. By the time the victim's ally has inserted his own chakra to disrupt the victim's chakra, the victim has already suffered 72 hours of hell. Yami stood up and saw himself drenched in sweat. For a second, he didn't know why, but the thought of Itachi came to his mind. He needed to find a way to have Tsunade heal Itachi. If Yami waits for too long, then Itachi's lung disease might become incurable. He might have not personally lived as Yami at the start of his life, but after fusing with the memories, he felt as if this was the life he lived. Yami may be cold and ruthless, but if he can't protect those who care about him and who he cares about, then what's the use of all that strength? It just becomes a meaningless struggle. Like the one Orochimaru is in. Orochimaru has always thirsted for eternal life, but he doesn't know what he wants to do when he gets it. During and after the Fourth Ninja War, he saw that even though Kagaya and other Otsutsuki live for almost thousands and millions of years, they still aren't satisfied and were still greedy for something or the other. He understood that once he gives into greed, there is no stopping it, and maybe one day even he will end up like someone who wants everything the world has to offer and still be unsatisfied. Small pulses of wind started originating from Yami's body, spreading outwards, and in a matter of seconds, all his clothes were dry and clean of dust. He looked at the destruction around him and shook his head. He knew this was nowhere enough to beat the people he will be going against in the upcoming years. Yami sighed as he thought, to the people around me I may seem strong, but only I know how weak I am compared to the shinobis that existed in the warring era. Sasuke and others seemed to have gone back to Tazuna's house. I should go too. After a few minutes, Yami reached Tazuna's house. He saw that no one was sitting in the backyard. He pushed the door aside and entered the house. As he entered, he saw that everyone was sitting at the table with grim expressions. They all looked at him, which made Yami ask what happened. Might Guy was the first to answer. Some villagers heard that Gato is hiring bandit groups. Though we aren't sure of it, it seems like it's to fight with us. Tazuna, who was a little furious at this moment, slammed his hand on the table and said, is he planning to kill us all just for his own greed? Sakura looked at her sensei and asked in a timid voice, Kakashi-sensei, is it even possible for us to fight against multiple bandit groups? Kakashi shook his head and said the number of those people makes it hard for us to take care of all of them. There is always the chance of some bandits keeping us busy while the others attack the villagers. On the other hand, we don't know if the bandit groups have any shinobis among them. If they do, things might get harder for us. Lee from the side showed her fist to Sakura and declared, Sakura, don't worry. With the strength of my youth, I will protect you. Sakura just scared at that and looked at Sasuke to see if he showed any change in an expression like jealousy, but to her disappointment, he wasn't even paying attention to Lee's statement nor at her. Naruto was looking intently at Yami, and Yami had noticed it, but he ignored it. Now Naruto pointed at Yami and said, Yami, today you defeated me, but next time I will defeat you. Just you wait and see. Before Yami could reply, Neji replied, today you lost to him without even knowing how, so what gives you the confidence to challenge him again, Naruto? Why don't you focus on surviving in front of me first and then think about defeating him? Neji had a smirk on his face. If things go normally, then his challenge might become true sooner than he thinks. Yami thought, recalling Neji's defeat against Naruto. Yami knew things might not go as they did in the canon, because in the canon Neji was prideful as the strongest genin, but now he was beaten time and time again by Yami, making him train harder. And just like Naruto wasn't as weak as he was in the canon. Yami was truly surprised to see the butterfly effect of his existence, but then one thing dawned on him. Will Orochimaru's target be Sasuke or him? Suddenly squeaking sounds could be heard outside the door, which made Yami turn back. Everyone's attention was caught by this. Inari quickly got up and opened the door. Everyone wanted to stop him, as it could also be a trick used by the enemy, but such things didn't come to Inari's mind. As he opened the door, he saw Bat come in and flutter his wings in front of Yami. Is that one of your summons, Yami? Kakashi asked. A summon of mine wouldn't come here, instead would just disappear and give me the memories. Wait a minute. This is the messenger I gave Zabuza. Yami thought. Yes, it's a messenger. Yami said as he got up and untied the small roll of paper from the bat's legs. He opened the roll and read it. He looked at everyone at the table. Come on, spit it out. Naruto said impatiently. The bandit groups contain shinobi mercenaries as well. Changes from the canon have started appearing. What more will change? Chapter 95, Gato's Bandits. What? Sakura and Naruto exclaimed together. Kakashi and Guy looked serious after hearing this. Kakashi asked, if I may ask, Yami, who sent you this information? A reliable source, that's all, Yami said. Kakashi understood that Yami wanted to protect the identity of this source, so he didn't ask further. Guy also asked a question that was bugging others. Does the letter say how many shinobis in total have been amassed? No, Guy-sensei, my source hasn't even sent an estimate, which means the risk is more than he wants to take. Yami replied. So what do we do now? Lee asked, looking at Guy and Kakashi. In the past year, along with his teammates, he defeated many bandits and mercenaries and even killed some, but fighting multiple of them while protecting civilians is not an easy task. Should we make a move tonight? Niji asked Guy, to which he replied, I don't think that would be a good idea. We can't attack without any provocation. Guy is right. Gato is a businessman, means he has his connections, so we can't attack him without any evidence. Kakashi said while thinking. Yami burnt the letter he had in his hand and left the bat to go back to Zabuza. He believed that Gato will come with some of his bandits and attack the bridge, but hiring shinobi mercenaries and other bandits was not something that had happened in the canon. He started to realize that as soon as he made a big change in the canon, the effects were equally big. Ugh, why are things so complicated? Naruto growled while ruffling his hair in anger. I heard the first missions are usually easy and are only D or C rank, but... Sakura was saying when Sasuke interrupted and said, but we would have never thought it would jump to A or B rank. This is definitely a rank. Kakashi sighed. Yami looked at Guy and Tazuna and asked, how many more days will it take to complete the bridge? Tazuna thought for a few seconds and said mostly probably 2 to 3 days at most. Why? Kakashi also turned to Yami as he knew Yami must have something brewing in his head. Do you have any way to resolve this? Kakashi asked. I would very much love to go and kill them all alone, but that would raise too many questions at Hiruzen's office, which might catch Danzo's attention. With the little feats that I have, I might have already caught Orochimaru's attention, but Danzo's would be worse. I don't have any way to counter the Kodo Ematsumi he has implanted in his right eye. Looks the bridge confrontation is the only way. The Chunin exams are coming, so I will have to show some of my capabilities. Yami thought. He looked at Kakashi and said, spread the news that the bridge will be completed tomorrow itself. Everyone was shocked to hear this. They expected Yami to give them a solution, but what Yami was now doing was bringing the problem to them early. What are you saying, Yami? They will attack us tomorrow then? Lee said. Yes, I don't see how that is a solution, Yami. Kakashi asked with a confused expression on his face. The more time we give them, the more his strength will increase, and he may even hire shinobi mercenaries from other lands as well. The only solution I see is to not give him the time to create a small army for him. He must have already seen Dai-sensei and Lee working at the bridge with Tazuna and understood that backup has arrived. He started hiring today, so if we let him hire for 2 more days, then who knows how many people we will have to face. Yami said, making everyone in understanding. What he is saying does make sense. He isn't backing out because we got Team Guy for backup, but increasing his strength. Time is of the essence for him, way more than for us. Kakashi thought. He nodded at Yami, then looked at Tazuna and his family and said, let's spread the news that the bridge is almost ready and tomorrow till we'll finish. Tazuna and Tsunami nodded. Though they were nervous about the fact that tens or maybe hundreds of bandits are coming to kill them, they couldn't do anything when they have come this far. Kakashi left with Tazuna and Tsunami while the others busied themselves in some work or the other. After a few hours, everyone was sitting back at the table. Kakashi had just returned with Tazuna and his daughter. They had told a lot of people that the bridge will complete tomorrow. Kakashi did notice a few people go toward Gato's house after hearing what Tazuna said. Kakashi wanted this news to get to Gato, and that's why he decided to not stop those people. While they were all eating, Kakashi looked at everyone and said, I am sure by now Gato is trying his best to get more and more people. His spies definitely told him everything Tazuna said to the villagers. Yami finished his food before everyone and then said, I am going to see what movements they are making. Naruto stopped Yami and said, I will also come with you, to which Yami replied, you are anything but sneaky. I can do this alone, as I am planning to use my summons for this. Yami said and left the room. Will he be fine all by himself? Sakura asked Guy, who just smiled and said he wouldn't have said it if he wasn't confident about it. Yami left Tazuna's house and split into dozens of bats. He had the past few hours to think, and he came to the conclusion that no matter how much he wants the canon to follow, things are gonna change, so he might as well lower the number of Yami's bandits a little. He was sure that tomorrow Gato will attack with his men, but if Yami could take out some strong people tonight, there will be fewer surprises tomorrow. Chapter 96, Gato's Allies. After Yami left Tazuna's house, he scattered into numerous bats and flew away. It was already past evening, so no one would find it odd that there were bats in the sky. He made sure that they don't fly around together. He decided to go to the market area in the Land of Waves, as that's where most of Gato's businesses were located. The market also had many people talking about the stuff going on, and Yami expected that the mercenaries and bandits that had been gathered by Gato may move freely through the market. Yami was right about his decision, as he heard many locals talk about the increased number of people that were roaming the market. Yami also saw a group of burly men with broadswords on their backs, while some had hoods on. They were moving in groups which were catching a lot of attention from the locals. Gato owned many businesses here, so no one had the guts to stand up to him or even question him. Through a couple of his bats, Yami noticed that they all were going inside the same building. It was a big inn, and from the looks of it, it was owned by Gato as well. Looks like the different mercenary groups are going to have a meeting with Gato, Yami thought. He used his hearing to focus on those groups. He wanted to know what they were talking about. "Boss, why do you think he would have called us so urgently?" one of the burly men asked the one standing in the middle, who had better equipment than them and also wore golden bracers. "Who cares? He sent 10,000 Rio and called us urgently. This is more than enough reason to come here. Gato is never short on money. And now when his letter included that this mission was urgent, he will agree to whatever amount we ask," the leader sneered. Yami also spied on what the other groups were talking. They all had gotten 10,000 Rio and an urgent invitation to meet Gato. These are the people who have arrived now. This means they were called when Gato found out that the bridge will be ready tomorrow. The ones that Zabuza wrote about in the letter must have already met Gato. I must say, no matter whichever world it is, money is still very powerful. Yami had a few of his bats circle Gato's inn. He saw that on the ground floor different mercenary and bandit groups were eating and drinking, while the leaders were invited to the first floor. Gato must be on the first floor, Yami thought. He started to find an entry inside the building so that he can eavesdrop on the conversation. Luckily, he found a broken window that leads to the attic. If it was someone else, they would have a hard time listening, but with the enhanced hearing of Yami, this was going to be a piece of cake. Yami wasn't there personally, but it was only a bat of his who he shared his senses, so even if someone from those leaders finds out about the eavesdropping, then there is no way that they can connect it to Yami or even the Hidden Leaf shinobis. Yami even had one of the bats sit at the window outside the first floor. He could see a long table in the room, and on one side sat Gato, while the leaders of the bandits and mercenaries sat on his left and right. One of the bandit leaders, who looked like a rogue ninja, glared at the bat sitting outside the window and frowned. Yami quickly had the bat fly away from there. It wasn't a risk worth taking. Just the audio was enough. He didn't want a visual of the meeting. After a few minutes, all the chairs at the table were full. Gato had shaggy brown hair and a pair of small circular black glasses. He wore a black suit with a purple tie. Seeing all the bandit leaders, he had a smile on his face. He stood up with open arms and said, "Thank you all for coming here at such short notice. I hope all of you have brought your best fighters, as I told you," Gato said. Yami couldn't see who was talking, but from this statement, he understood that this man was Gato. He then started hearing the voices of different people talking. These were all leaders of different groups. "Gato, what mess did you make this time? Why are so many groups here? I am only here because the letter said that the 10,000 Rio was just loose change compared to what I will get after completing this mission." "That is right, my friends. This time the reward is really good," Gato said. "Spill it, you sneaky bastard. Don't think I didn't notice those. There are more mercenary groups than us." "You are planning something big," a voice said in a vicious tone. "Please calm sound. It is true that in the afternoon I had a meeting with 4 more mercenary groups. And 2 of them can even use chakra. The reason why I have called all of you is to fight for me. There is a man I want killed, so I hired one of the 7 mist swordsmen, but the old man hired a squad of hidden leaf shinobis to guard him, and in the end the swordsman was killed. The bridge the old man is building will complete tomorrow, and I want you all to kill that squad and another squad that has been sent as a backup." "Gato, are you out of your mind? Telling us to kill 2 hidden leaf squads? Even the 5, great villages would think twice before doing that. No need to get so worked up. Every team has only one grown-up while the other 3 members are just kids. Gato said. Oh, Genin teams? That's doable. I like to kill those younglings with my own hand, hee a man said. Shut up, you maniac. After losing one ear to a hidden leaf shinobi and getting thrown out of the hidden stone village, you have become bloodthirsty for hidden shinobi's blood, the voice of the burly man sounded. As Yami had already eavesdropped on them while they were traveling, he could match a few voices to the faces. Chapter 97, Rogue Stone Shinobis. From that, he realized that the man who just talked about killing the kids was the same man who glared at Yami's bat. Yami also found out that this man was exiled from the Hidden Stone Village and had also lost an ear to Hidden Leaf Shinobis. Yami continued to listen to the conversation for a few more minutes. At first most of them were giving reasons like they are from the Hidden Leaf. We don't want the attention of one of the 5 great villages. I am not sure about fighting trained shinobis. They were able to take down one of the 7 mist swordsmen. But after Gato said that he will pay 100,000 ryo to each group that participates, and the one who kills the Jonin can take the bounty, all the groups agreed. They knew that the bounties of the 2 Jonins were millions in the bingo book. As expected, money triumphed their fear of death. Yami thought as he shook his head. By this time he had already formed his original body and stood near an abandoned building. He was still using a couple of bats to find the other bandit groups. After a few minutes, Yami saw the group leaders come out of the inn with their men and split into different directions. He expected Gato to put them all together as that would be easy, but seems like Gato was smarter and knew that piling them all together may catch a lot of unwanted attention, and keeping multiple bandits and mercenary groups together could also lead to infighting among them. Yami summoned a few more bats and had them follow the leaders. Yami didn't send a bat to follow the stone shinobi who was with 5 of his subordinates and decided to follow him personally. He seemed the most dangerous of all, so I need to take him out first. The most important thing is to kill them without creating a commotion. It seems L will have to wait until they reach the inn they plan to stay in tonight. Yami thought. He was wary of the stone shinobi from the start, and having him in the fight tomorrow at the bridge was the last thing he wanted. Yami saw that the group had entered a small mansion. He noticed there were 10 more shinobis at the mansion. He understood that Gato must have lured this rogue stone Jonin by telling him that he will get to kill hidden leaf shinobis. Gato knows what they want and how to get them on his side. This is how he has been doing business and smuggling for so long. Yami started to scout the mansion and the guards protecting it. There were 2 gates to the mansion and 2 guards guarding each gate. The backyard had 2 more guards, and in the mansion, there were 9 shinobis with 7 living downstairs and 3 on the first floor. The leader must be on the first floor and there must be 2 guards outside his room. I would like to start killing the guards, but one wrong move and the leader might get alerted. He is from the Hidden Stone, so he might try to use some Earth-style jutsus. Yami thought. He kept coming up with different plans to take down the entire group. He even thought of putting the leader into a Genjutsu and making him see his own subordinates as lead shinobis so that he kills them. He will have to add some trash talk to the Genjutsu so the leader feels that he is surrounded by leaf shinobis and they are looking down on him, but this plan could lead to the group leader using Earth-style jutsus or him shouting nonsense, attracting everyone's attention. I think the easiest way is the most effective as well. Yami thought. He hid inside the bushes located at the mansion's corner. He made some ruffling noises to attract the attention of one of the guards. Guard 1 noticed this and said to Guard 2, I think something just moved in those bushes. Guard 2 waved his hand and said, must be some animal. Go and check. Maybe we can have a rabbit roast tonight. Guard -1 nodded and walked toward the bush. He had a spear in his hand. He used the spear to poke inside the bush, but nothing happened. The animal must have left, he thought, but that's when he saw that the bush a little ahead of it was ruffling. So there you are, my dinner. Guard 1 said and went ahead. Before he could poke the second bush with a spear, he felt like he needed to cough, but he couldn't. He touched his throat and saw that a kunai has passed through it. He couldn't even scream. He looked toward the hand that was holding the kunai and saw a kid wearing a hidden leaf headband. He wanted to alert the other guard but couldn't and fell to the ground. Just before touching the ground, Yami held the limp body of Guard 1 and sealed him inside a scroll. He then used the transformation technique and changed his appearance to Guard 1. He picked up the fallen spear and came out of the bush. Guard 2 saw that Yami came back empty-handed, so he asked, "You couldn't even catch a rabbit?" The disguised Yami smirked and said, "He has run off to your side. I will see if you can catch him," while walking near the guard. He then looked at the bushes behind Guard 2 and said, "See, there he is." Guard 2 turned back to see but couldn't see any rabbit nor any ruffling in the bushes, so he asked, "Where?" "Here," Yami said, making Guard 2 widen his eyes. He saw that a spear had pierced his heart. He wanted to ask why, but a hand was covering his mouth and wasn't letting him look back. He died thinking that his own comrade killed him. Chapter 98, Sneaky Beaky Like. After killing Guard 2, Yami stored his corpse in the same scroll. He created a shadow clone and had him transform into Guard 2. After a few seconds, the outer gate looked normal. Yami erased any signs of struggle or even a drop of blood. Now it was just Yami transformed into Guard 1 while his shadow clone transformed into Guard 2. Yami opened the door and saw 2 guards guarding the backyard as he expected. The 2 guards looked at Yami and asked, "What's the matter?" Yami made a bored expression and said, "Should we change our shifts?" He didn't know whether this was the right thing to say, but they were mercenaries, so they wouldn't be obeying orders word to word. Guard 3 shook his head and said, "There is still an hour left before we can switch with the ones inside. I am bored to death already. Who's stupid enough in this area to attack us?" Guard 2, Yami's clone, smiled and said, "We caught a few rabbits. Do you guys want to come to roast them with us? We will roast it outside the door. I don't think anyone is going to come to meet the boss tonight." Guard 4 looked at Guard 3 and said, "He is right, you know. I am hungry anyway. Let's go." Guard 3 nodded and they both exited the main door. They looked around and said, "Where are the rabbits? Did you skewer them already?" "Yup," Yami and his clone said in unison and pierced their throat with a spear. "Now they are skewered," Yami chuckled. He and his clone didn't even need to close the guards' mouths as they had directly attacked the throat. The pale-blooded bodies of both the guards fell to the ground. Yami put them in the scroll and then he and his clone burnt the blood and threw some fresh soil on it so no one will notice. These 2 killings made a bigger mess than the outer guards' kills. Yami created 2 more clones and had them transform into Guard 1 and Guard 3 while he himself transformed into Guard 4. He let 2 of his clones behave like guards outside while he and another clone came to guard the backyard. Yami was going to sneak inside and see what the 8 mercenaries who were on the ground floor were doing and how to lure them out 1 to 2 at a time, but then the window of the first floor opened with a bang. Yami looked up and saw a man with 1 ear and a rugged face jump out of the window. He looked at Yami and his clone and said in a cold tone, "I smell blood. Damn it, his fucking senses." Yami cursed. He stammered a little and said, "Boss, the ones outside must have killed some animal." He narrowed his eyes as he looked at Yami and nodded. Yami didn't even sigh and turned back to continue guarding, but then he felt a cold chill run down his spine and he jumped ahead. He looked back and saw a big earth spike had emerged from where he stood. Yami looked at the man who had a sneer on his face. "I have killed enough humans and animals to know the difference. Who are you?" Yami didn't answer him and threw a shuriken at the man. He easily nodded and jumped down. He looked at the mansion but didn't call his people out. He is confident enough to kill me without needing any help. I wish I get such opponents my whole life, Yami thought. He then took out 6 shurikens and lodged them between his fingers. He then threw all of them toward the man. "What kind of an idiot are you? Did you think such puny shurikens will do anything to me?" The man sneered as looked at Yami as if he was an insect. He made some hand signs and quickly raised an earth wall in front of him. He used just a basic spell so the wall was not too thick. "I thought you were strong, but you turned out to be a weakling." Yami sighed and threw a kunai at the wall. This wasn't just a normal kunai but one of kunais he bought that day in the shop. This kunai was now covered in wind chakra. It easily penetrated the wall and lodged itself deep inside the man's lungs. His eyes widened seeing that a hole was created in the wall and the kunai had even managed to stab his lung. It had nearly missed his heart. He couldn't help but cough out blood and scream. "Arghhhhhh, you idiots, see come out," he said while blood poured out from his wound as well as his mouth. His lung is filling with blood and soon he will choke on his own blood and die. Now all I have to do is erase the idiots inside. Yami thought as he looked at the mansion door. Mercenaries started pouring out of it. 7 people stepped out and the 2 guards who were guarding the boss's door also rushed down hearing the screams of their boss. Yami ignored the leader and rushed at the 9 mercenaries. He didn't have his sword at the time and unsealing it from a scroll could be time-consuming and Yami had to silence all of them before anyone from the outside finds out. He knew Chidori would have been perfect if only it wasn't so noisy. He activated his Sharingan and put everyone in a Genjutsu. They all started feeling as if some vines had gripped their necks and the more they would struggle the more the grip would tighten. The 9 idiots started choking themselves. The boss was astonished to see this. He didn't understand what was happening at first but then he looked at Yami and saw the red eyes. That's the Sharingan," he muttered. Yami quickly dashed between the 9 mercenaries and just stabbed each mercenary in the neck. After a few seconds, Yami was standing in the backyard surrounded by bloody corpses. As he expected, the boss bled out and died. Yami felt a little tired after using a Genjutsu on so many people at the same time but when he concentrated on his chakra core, a wave of chakra spread inside his body bringing him back to his peak again. "I should get something for such sneaky things," Yami thought and then after a few seconds a smile appeared on his face as he said what better weapon than Assassin Creed's hidden blade. Chapter 99, Culling the Weeds. Yami went near the corpse of the boss and pulled out the kunai that was stuck in his chest. The boss knew that if he had removed that kunai then he would have bled out faster. He even stored the corpse of the boss in a separate scroll. Yami looked around with a pained expression as he said, "Ugh, the cleanup is what I hate. Thank God for Shadow Clone Jutsu." Yami performed some hand seals and 4 clones appeared in a puff of smoke beside him. Yami's clone who was transformed into a guard looked at Yami and said, "I will stand outside like a guard so that no one becomes suspicious." What an ass, Yami and all the clones thought simultaneously. Yami started collecting all the corpses and then the shurikens he had thrown on the earth wall. He looked at his clones and said, 3 of you get rid of all the blood while 1 go inside the mansion and collect everything you think belongs to these mercenaries. He tossed an empty storage scroll to the clone. Yami then went to collect the shurikens that he had thrown when the boss was outside the 1st floor window. As he was about to collect he looked up in the sky and said, "My bats have found the 2 groups of shinobis that came this afternoon. They are staying inside the jungle which means I don't need to waste time being sneaky." After 10 to 15 minutes, the entire mansion was clean. Not a drop of blood could be seen or even smelled. Yami didn't want to make the same mistake that got him caught by the leader of these mercenaries. The clone who was tasked with collecting the things inside the mansion came out and tossed the scroll back to Yami. He then dispersed itself. Yami closed his eyes for a second and then opened it as he thought except for money and weapons, there wasn't much these people had. Not even a single jutsu from the hidden stone. The boss must have a base where he kept his main stash. These are just some of his people who came on Gato's request. Yami then left the mansion in the direction which lead outside the residential area into the mountains. He now planned to take care of these 2 groups as well so that tomorrow morning all the people his and Sasuke's squad will be facing will be non-shinobis. Now that the future has changed to this extent, anyone can die including Tazuna and his family. Yami thought as he was running. He was in a dilemma where he didn't know whether he did the right thing by changing the future or not. He changed it to avoid some unnecessary deaths, but he might even make things worse than they were in the canon. If he shows too much power, he may attract the attention of Black Zetsu and Obito and even Pain could focus on him. Yami was strong but nowhere enough to deal with Akatsuki members. The only one he felt he had a chance of defeating was Sasori. Tazuna's house. In the backyard of Tazuna's house, two people were sitting around a small bonfire. These two were Sasuke Uchiha and Neji Hyuga. Sasuke and Neji were both the quiet types and never had any contact with each other. Kakashi selected them both to be on guard duty for the first part of the night. From time to time Sasuke would use his Sharingan to look around in the darkness of the night while Neji would use his Byakugan to scout long distance. "I am glad to see you two getting along," a voice came from behind them. Both suddenly went on alert. Sasuke held the grip of his sword ready to pull out in the blink of an eye. Neji activated his Byakugan and covered his palms with blue chakra, but they both relaxed after a second, seeing that the person was none other than Sasuke's sensei Kakashi. "Sensei, why aren't you sleeping?" Sasuke asked. Kakashi shrugged and said, "I wasn't feeling sleepy, so I decided to give you both company. Sit down, both of you. There won't be any attack tonight." Sasuke and Neji both sat down back on the rocks near the bonfire, but they both didn't understand what Kakashi meant by his last sentence. Sasuke looked at Kakashi with a question in mind, but Neji beat him to it. "Mr. Kakashi, what did you mean when you said that there won't be any attack tonight? Did you already scout the village before coming here?" Sasuke and Neji both looked at Kakashi for the answer. Seeing the two kids confused, Kakashi chuckled and said, "Why do you think Yami hasn't returned yet?" Neji and Sasuke looked at each other. They both didn't know the answer, so they looked back at Kakashi. "You both know him personally, yet how come you don't understand him?" Kakashi said while shaking his head in disappointment, which made Sasuke and Neji both a little embarrassed. Kakashi looked at the fire in front of him and said, "Yami doesn't like variables. He doesn't like it when he is uncertain of what he is going to face. When he found out that shinobis were also going to be joining Gato, he became uncertain of what will happen tomorrow. If he is doing what I think he is doing, then tomorrow we won't have any problems." "He will." Kakashi stopped and looked at his side. Neji and Sasuke followed his gaze and looked there as well. They didn't see anything for a second, but then numerous bats assembled to form the figure of Yami. They looked at Yami and saw that he seemed a little tired, and he had a few spots of dust on his clothes, which indicated that he might have been in a scuffle, but there wasn't a single drop of blood or sweat on him. Kakashi looked at Yami and asked, "What information did you discover?" He emphasized on the word information as a way to tell Yami that he knew that Yami didn't just go to get information. Yami smirked and said there won't be any shinobi coming to the battle tomorrow, and he went inside the mansion. Kakashi smiled and then looked at Sasuke and Neji, who were now connecting the dots. They both widened their eyes and said, "Did he?" Chapter 100, The Battle on the Bridge, Part 1. Kakashi raised his hand and stopped both of them from completing the sentence. He stood up from the rock and said, "Forget this ever happened. You will face such instances in the future as well and may have to turn a blind eye to things. Go and get some sleep. Tomorrow you have a big battle to fight, and Yami has already done his part. Sasuke, if you perform properly tomorrow, then I will teach you a jutsu that both me and Yami worked on." He then looked at Neji and said, "I am sure Guy has a lot of hopes from you, so don't let him down. Hyuga techniques are really efficient in managing a crowd." Sasuke and Neji looked at each other, and in both their minds they had started considering each other as rivals. They both looked back at Kakashi, nodded, and went inside the house. Kakashi looked back at the door and muttered, "Yami, what goes on in that mind of yours?" The next day it was already morning and everyone was quiet at the breakfast table. They were all worried of today's fight. Naruto, who would usually wake up late and laze around, was also ready with everyone. The most stressed was Sakura, as she felt someone had just put her in front of a tiger. She wanted to protect Tazuna and his family, but she knew how weak she was. Today was the first time she would have to fight someone for real and maybe even kill him. Tsunami was aware of Sakura's emotions, but she could do nothing about it. She herself was in fear for her family's life. Sasuke and Neji would take glances at Yami, who was in his own thought. Yesterday he discovered that when he doesn't have a sword, assassination becomes a hard thing to do. He had decided to have the old man make a hidden blade bracer like that in Assassin's Creed, and so he was now thinking about the design and everything else. Inari had lost his appetite due to all this, had looked like he would cry any minute now. Naruto saw this and smiled brightly. Inari, today you will see how I will beat up Gato and goons and send them crying, he said, patting his chest. Kakashi smiled, seeing his optimistic student cheer up the kid. Inari looked up at Naruto and said in a low voice, you said the same thing before your match with Yami, but then you just dropped on the ground. Hearing this, Naruto choked on his own words, and the others on the table could help but let a chuckle escape their mouth. Lee was the only one that could laugh openly, as he was always like this. Naruto glared at Lee and then looked at Inari and said, so what? I will keep trying until I beat him. And with all of us here, how could we let anything happen to you, old man Tazuna and Aunt Tsunami? Your mother and grandpa will be safe, and I, Naruto Uzumaki, promise you that. Inari was impressed by these encouraging words as he wiped the tears welling up in his eyes. He looked at Naruto making a tough expression and nodded. He decided to become a strong man to protect his mother and his grandpa. Everyone's mood was a little uplifted hearing this conversation. Might Guy looked at Kakashi and asked, so what's the plan, Kakashi? Kakashi looked at everyone and said, I think 2 people should stay here and look after Tsunami and Inari while the rest will be on the bridge ready to fight Gato and his goons. That way, even if Gato sends someone here to capture Tsunami or Inari as leverage, 2 of us who stay here will take care of them. What do you guys think? Kakashi asked, and his gaze stopped at Yami. Everyone looked at Yami as well. He looked the calmest and frail among them all, as his perfectly sculpted body was always hidden under baggy hoodies. Yami, who was having breakfast at his own pace, looked up as he sensed everyone's gaze on him. He looked at Kakashi and said, sounds good to me. Kakashi raised his eyebrows as he heard that. Seems like he isn't worried at all. He didn't just kill a handful of people last night, did he? Kakashi thought. Kakashi looked at Naruto and said, Naruto, I want you and Lee to stay here and protect these 2. Naruto wanted to rebuke Kakashi's decision, but he also wanted to personally make sure that Inari is safe. He nodded and turned toward Lee, who already looked excited. Naruto, we will protect them with all our youth, Lee said. Let's get going now, Kakashi said, and everyone got up to leave. Sakura slowly walked closer to Kakashi and asked, Sensei, you want me to take part in the fight as well? Kakashi said, one day you will need to fight Sakura, but that day isn't today. Today, I want you to see those who are Genins like you fight. I want you to know what you need to achieve to become a shinobi. Sakura nodded and said, I understand, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi, should we leave now? Guy asked as he along with the others were standing outside Tazuna's house with Tazuna. Kakashi nodded and he left with Sakura. As they were heading toward the bridge, they saw that many villagers were looking at them with eyes of pity. They wanted to support Tazuna in making the bridge, but they were also scared for the safety of their family. A couple of villagers came to Tazuna and said, Uncle Tazuna, let us hide Tsunami and Inari till everything is back to normal. Gato won't hesitate to hurt them. Tazuna patted the man's shoulder and said, don't worry, Gato won't trouble us after today, and he started walking again. As they reached the bridge, they saw that a couple of mercenaries were already standing on the other side of the bridge and Gato was nowhere to be seen. And it starts, Kakashi thought as everybody got in front of Tazuna to protect him. Chapter 101, Battle on the Bridge Part 2. Kakashi, our welcome party is already here, Guy said in his usual enthusiastic tone. They all had expected that Gato's goons would attack them today, but they didn't think they would be here early in the morning. Kakashi gave a side-eye to Yami and said something must have spooked Gato. Sasuke and Neji also couldn't help and sneak a glance at Yami, who wasn't even looking at the bandits. On the other side of the bridge, 10 to 15 bandits were standing. Most of them looked like leaders of different bandit groups. Most of them were the leaders that Yami had seen yesterday going for the meeting, and some were just their right-hand men. The burly bandit that Yami saw yesterday looked at one of the other leaders and asked, where is that one-eared freak that was at the meeting yesterday? The other bandit smirked and said he was talking a lot about killing hidden Lee shinobis, but looks like he chickened out at the last moment. A female bandit leader leaning on a tree nearby looked at everyone around her and said he isn't the only one who chickened out. In yesterday's afternoon meeting, we 4 groups had agreed, but now except me only one group is present. Two groups chickened out as well. Yami and his allies could only see these 10 to 15 bandits, but they knew that the jungle behind them must be full of other bandits. Yami had already sensed the presence of close to 100 people inside the forest. Niji, try to see how many are they with your eyes. Guy said, to which Niji nodded and activated his Byakugan. He looked around for a few seconds and then deactivated his eyes. Guy-sensei, the number is close to 200. I can't say for an exact number, but all of them have weak chakra signatures. Niji said. Kakashi quickly formulated a plan and said Yami and Sakura stay with Tazuna. Sasuke, you and me will take on the bandits that come on the left side of the bridge. Sasuke nodded and unsheathed his sword. He didn't activate his Sharingan as this fight was going to test his endurance and not his strength. Niji, you and me will take the right side. Guy said as he quickly took his fighting stance. Niji covered his palms with chakra, ready to display the Hyuga Taijutsu he was so proud of. On the other side of the bridge, the bandits were talking to each other as they didn't know whether to initiate the attack or not. They were waiting for Gato. After a few seconds, Gato, wearing his usual attire and black sunglasses, appeared from the forest. There were a few setbacks, but now things are back on track. Everyone be ready. Your target is the old man standing at the back. He then looked at one of the bandit leaders and asked, did you do what I told you to? The bandit nodded and said, as per your instructions, I have sent 3 of my men to capture the old man's family. A creepy smile appeared on Gato's face as he said to Tazuna, let me see if you are still stubborn after I have your daughter and grandson in my grasp. The bandits started to come out of the forest and walk toward the bridge. Many looked like run-off-the-mill bandits with simple farming tools as weapons, but there were many who were proper mercenaries and had weapons. Yami looked to the side and saw a stack of wooden planks. He went and sat there to make himself comfortable. They do have quantity, but there is no quality. Kakashi and Guy both didn't need to take part in the fight. Only one of them would have been enough. Yami thought. By this time the bandits had started running. The bandit leaders and their right-hand men didn't rush as they planned to tire out the shinobis first. One bandit leader who was wearing a cloak looked at his right-hand man and said, tell our men to go from under the bridge and ambush the old man. He is only protected by a girl and a kid. Both of them will be easy targets. Yes, sir, the man said and left. Kakashi, who was a few feet away from the bandits, said, Sasuke, throw a fireball at them and start cutting them down. After the fireball, fight with only physical strength unless necessary. I want to see how much Sasuke can last with only taijutsu. I am not worried about him getting injured or dying, as Yami will be watching the whole time. Never did I think that I would put so much trust in a 9-year-old. Kakashi chuckled in his head. Sasuke nodded and performed the seals to throw a fireball. He made sure to focus on the spread of the fireball rather than the temperature. The opponents weren't shinobis, so they wouldn't be able to protect themselves. The huge fireball swept at the bandits. Many of the bandits wanted to run away from it, but their entire vision was covered by the fireball. They had no escape. The fire wasn't high enough to instantly turn them to ashes, but they couldn't help but writhe in pain. Some who weren't too burned jumped down into the river underneath. Kakashi quickly took advantage of all this chaos and moved between the bandits, attacking their vital spots. He wanted to kill each and everyone with only one move. This was the best way to keep fighting for all. Sasuke also stabbed those who were already on the ground squirming because of the burns. He didn't want to keep them suffering. Hearing their screams, smelling their burnt skin, and seeing their black bodies rolling on the ground, Sasuke wanted to vomit, but he held himself and continued stabbing and slashing the bandits with his sword. Sakura, who saw such a dreadful scene for the first time in her life, ran to the nearest railing and puked into the river. Chapter 102, Battle on the Bridge Part 3. Seeing those bandits in such a condition is making my stomach turn inside out, Sakura said as she cleaned her face and came back beside Tazuna. Tazuna looked at her with pity in his eyes, because he knew that one day even she would have to do something like this to her enemies. The battle on the right side of the bridge where Guy and Niji were waiting had also started. Guy was kicking and punching every bandit coming near him. The sound of bones crushing could be heard with every punch and kick. Many of the bandits died on the spot after getting a lethal hit on their chest or head. Niji, on the other hand, was targeting the joints of the bandits, making them unable to use their limbs. He hadn't killed as many as the others, but his taijutsu was showing its prowess at defense. He hadn't let a single bandit pass through him and reach near Tazuna and the others. From time to time, he and Sasuke would look at each other to see who was ahead. The bandits kept coming, and Kakashi and Sasuke didn't use any other jutsu as it would damage the bridge as well. Kakashi didn't use Chidori as mere mercenaries weren't worth it. The bandit leaders didn't even bother looking at their dying people. The money and work Gato had promised them after a successful mission was worth way more than those crude bandits whose only job was to tire out the shinobis. After fighting for quite some time, Niji and Sasuke started feeling tired. They were completely soaked in sweat and they were breathing heavily. Guy and Kakashi noticed this and told them to go back a few steps and recover some part of their strength so that they could jump into battle again. We didn't even use our dojutsu but still got tired. We need to go back into battle as soon as we can. These damn bandits aren't stopping at all, they both thought. Sasuke sheathed his sword and kept it on the table near Tazuna. Niji and he both came near Tazuna and Sakura. Sakura gave them water and gave them some ointment to put on their wounds. Sakura tried to put the ointment herself on Sasuke, but he denied it. He didn't want to look weak. As they were both treating their injuries and Sakura was helping them, they heard sounds of tapping on both their sides. The three Genins looked up and saw 20 hooded figures standing on the railings. All 20 of them had sickles in their hand. The sickles had a green substance on their edge. Sasuke and Niji quickly stood up. Niji looked at Sasuke and Sakura and said, "Careful, the sickles seem to have poison on them." Yami, who was laying on the stack of wooden planks, raised his eyebrows as he heard that this was the first time Niji has taken the initiative to be a team player and even warned Genins from another team. Niji and Sasuke both looked at Kakashi and Guy, but both their senseis were busy fighting a horde of bandits. They understood that it was now up to them to handle these bandits. They both got back in their fighting stance. Seeing Sasuke's hand on the sword shivering and the multiple cuts on Niji's hand, Sakura couldn't help but feel angry at herself for being so powerless. She mustered all the courage she had, pulled out a kunai from her pocket. "I will fight with you guys," she said, making a stern face, but inside she was panicking. Niji turned toward Sakura and instantly concluded that she wasn't up for the task. He then looked at Yami, who was laying down comfortably. Niji wanted to ask Yami for his help, but he could do so. He knew Yami had already done a lot in this mission by getting rid of the shinobi groups, and asking him to do more would be shameless behavior on his part. 5 cloaked mercenaries from each side of the bridge jumped at the 3 Genins. They knew that Niji and Sasuke were already tired and Sakura wasn't a hardened fighter like the rest of shinobis. Niji looked back at Yami, who was still resting. Yami looked as if he was unbothered by what was happening. Niji wasn't even sure whether Yami would save his elder brother, much less him and Sakura. But still, Niji decided to fight the mercenaries and protect Tazuna, even if it is his last battle. Even if me and Niji take on 4 bandits, Sakura still has to take on 2, and except me, both of them don't use weapons, so they might get infected with the green substance. Sakura's kunai won't be much of a help if she can't use them properly. Thoughts were racing through Sasuke's mind as he saw the predicament he was in. Sasuke slashed his sword at one of the mercenaries, who got a slash on his shoulder. The cut wasn't deep enough to cut off the man's arm, but still Sasuke heard the man wince in pain and jump back. The one beside him quickly took the opportunity and swiped his sickle towards Sasuke's neck, but Sasuke stopped it with his sword before it could touch his neck. He expected the man to jump back as well, seeing that his attack had failed, but the man applied more pressure. "He wants to keep my hands and sword engaged with his sickle so that his comrades can attack me." Realization dawned on Sasuke, and he saw a mercenary run from his other side with a sickle in his hand. He aimed for his waist, and the sickle was lathered with the green poison. Before the man could get close to Sasuke, Sakura stabbed that man's neck with her kunai. A jet of blood sprayed on her clothes. The smell of blood and the red scene in front of her horrified her. She was able to match the mercenary's speed only because she used chakra to boost her speed instantly. It was a trick shown by Kakashi to dodge attacks quickly. "I killed someone." Sakura said. She looked at Neji and Sasuke only to see the two of them on their knees resisting the bandits. Are we gonna die? Is this it for me? She thought, but then she heard a voice coming from behind her. Leaf Whirlwind. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Chapter 103, End of the Mission. As soon as Sakura heard this, she saw Lee and multiple Naruto jump from above her and tackle the mercenaries fighting with Neji and Sasuke. Sakura sighed in relief seeing that they now had backup. Using his Leaf Whirlwind, Lee pushed back the mercenary, keeping Sasuke engaged and the two behind him. On the other side, numerous shadow clones of Naruto had overwhelmed the 4 mercenaries. The mercenaries who were still standing on the railing saw that their opponent had a backup, so it was their chance to fight as well. The remaining 10 jumped in on the action as well. Naruto and Lee were currently fighting mercenaries, but even they were somewhat tired after fighting the few people Gato had sent to Tazuna's house. Lee and Naruto looked back at the 10 mercenaries in the air coming at them. Neji and Sasuke, who were already on their knees, also looked at the mercenaries jumping in to kill them. But then they all felt a calm breeze come from their left and pass to their right. The clothes of the mercenaries also swayed, but the next second their bodies split into multiple pieces. The ones who were already fighting with Naruto and Lee also weren't spared. They also died cut by the breeze. They didn't even know what cut them and how. Naruto and Lee quickly backed off seeing this. They looked at the side from where the breeze came from and saw Yami standing and pointing his palm toward the mercenaries. Tazuna and Sakura weren't used to such graphic scenes. Sasuke had seen Itachi kill his clansmen and Neji had been on different extermination missions for the past year. But none of them saw someone cut into pieces. They kept looking at Yami, who had a cold expression on his face. At first, they thought Yami used his sword with incredible speed, but they saw that his sword was still leaning on the planks. It had not been used. The control bat summoning granted me toward wind enabled me to do something like this. It really cuts through the skin like butter, and I can feel the individual blades forming in the air and moving as per my command. They aren't strong enough to cut through high-level shinobis, but these mercenaries are like paper. Yami thought. He had practiced this move multiple times when training alone, but he lacked the control to not hurt his allies if they are in the way. And today he finally achieved that as well. What jutsu was that? Naruto asked. Seeing a new jutsu always excited him. He was so excited by all this that the scene of bloodshed didn't even register in his mind. It's a technique which I got because of my summoning animal. Yami answered. He then looked at his brother and Neji. They had fallen on there but while moving back. Yami's technique shocked them to such an extent that they didn't have the time to stand up and move back. It is a mild poison. Go get it treated. Gai-sensei and Mr. Kakashi are almost finished. Yami said while looking at the other side of the bridge. Kakashi and Gai were now fighting the leaders of different groups. They had almost killed all of them and the last few were remaining. Gato was nowhere to be seen. Gato's mansion. This can't be happening. Gato entered his mansion muttering. He expected the elite shinobis to either run away seeing so many people or die at the hands of mercenaries, but since today morning everything was going wrong. The ones he believed in the most were the groups who had shinobis in them, but all of them went missing this morning. They all just disappeared in thin air. He still went ahead with his plan and even sent a few people to kidnap Tazuna's family as leverage, but even those people hadn't returned. He understood that they must have died, and now he saw the elite shinobis disposing off all the other groups as well. Even the kids were killing bandits like weeds. I need to leave here now. I can take my revenge later. Gato muttered as he came to the hall of his mansion. He heard some noise coming from his treasure room. He panicked and ran in its direction. As he came in the hallway, he saw that the guards stationed to protect his treasury are all dead, lying on the ground. Who did this? Was it the Leaf Shinobis, or did some bandits get greedy? Is my treasure gone? Gato said as he was about to further toward the treasury. He heard. The treasury is empty. I took it all. Gato felt a chill run down his spine as he looked back. Zabuza, weren't you dead? Zabuza was standing with Haku on his side. He chuckled and said, "Do I look dead to you?" Gato suddenly roared angrily, "You asshole, how dare you bite the hand that fed you?" Zabuza shrugged and said, "I just got a better deal than you were offering Gato." He couldn't tell Gato that he was forced into this by a 9-year-old. Gato would have died laughing after listening to this. Gato's eyes widened as he heard this. He couldn't figure out who would make such a preemptive strike against him. He looked at Zabuza and said, "I will give you half my wealth to kill those Lee shinobi bastards." Zabuza took out his sword and said, "I have all your wealth with me. Why would I need half? I even found the wealth you hid under the brothels under your control. Don't worry, I will make good use of it." Gato's eyes were bloodshot, but he knew he had no chance of defeating Zabuza or Haku, so he started to run away toward another hallway so that he could escape, but after a couple of steps he felt pain in his knees. He looked down and saw 2 senbon needles had pierced the back of his leg. It was Haku who did it. She didn't want Gato to waste more time. Zabuza never told him why are they even looting Gato. "Farewell, Gato," Zabuza said as he rushed over to Gato in the blink of an eye with his sword ready to behead the smuggler. Chapter 104, Clean Up and Farewell. Looking at the beheaded Gato, Haku turned toward Zabuza and asked, "Should we dispose of his body as well?" Zabuza shook his head and said no. If the Lee shinobis can't confirm that Gato is dead, then they might try to pry into things further. They won't investigate who killed him and the guards at the mansion, as this isn't a part of their mission. Let's go before anyone comes in. I wasn't sure when that kid said that Gato would no longer be a problem, but looks like he did what he said he would. For a week, I should just lay low. Today, I will be sealing my sword and removing my bandages so that I can live in plain sight. I'll send half of Gato's wealth to Tazuna in a few days as well. The kid wasn't even fighting. I doubt his allies know about his strength or not. Zabuza thought as he left the mansion with Haku and disappeared. On the bridge now everyone had gathered except Tsunami and Inari. Kakashi and Guy had finished killing all the bandits and their leaders. He decided not to follow Gato as it could also be a trap. Kakashi saw that most of them were tired, so recuperating and resting would be the best choice. As he and Guy walked toward the rest of the group, he saw Sasuke and Neji were covered in injuries, and some of them even had a green substance on them. Sakura had applied the ointment while Lee and Naruto were helping them stand. Kakashi then turned toward Yami, who was standing at the railing looking at the river below. Did he let his brother and ally get injured to such an extent before helping them? Kakashi thought. He walked closer to Yami and asked, "Why didn't you help them sooner?" Without looking at Kakashi, Yami said, "What doesn't kill them makes them strong. I don't think I can win an argument against you." Kakashi shook his head and looked back at his comrades with a satisfying smile. He felt that Sasuke and Sakura had grown up compared to how they were at the start of the mission. "You all must be tired already. I will clean up here," Yami said, and Kakashi nodded. Though the fight wasn't too hard for him, the number of enemies proved to be a big problem. Kakashi turned around and saw a bat flying toward Yami. The bat had a small white paper rolled and tied to its legs. "Seems like your source has sent a message," Kakashi said. Yami turned back and saw the bat coming at him. The bat hovered near Yami for a few seconds before gripping his arms upside down. Yami removed the letter and let the bat go back. He read the letter and then burned it. He looked at Kakashi, who was now standing with the others. "What did the letter say? Anything we should know?" Kakashi asked. "My source says Gato and some of his guards were found dead in Gato's mansion. Looked like a bandit team betrayed him and stole all his wealth, killing Gato in the process," Yami said. "The things people do for money," the old Tazuna said as he shook his head. For those who weren't shinobis, money was a power in itself. The money Gato depended so much on became the reason for his death. "Let's go for now and get some rest. Yami handles the cleanup and get Gato's head back. I will need it while presenting the report to Hokage-sama," Kakashi said and left with the others. Yami performed some hand signs and created 4 clones. He then looked at the clones and flickered out. The clones knew what they were supposed to do when they were created. The people dead here weren't shinobis, so devouring them won't give Yami anything, so the clones started to take only the heads of the bandits and put them in a scroll and burned everything else, the body and even the blood. The bodies on the bridge were thrown in the forest and burned as well. Using a fire jutsu on a wooden bridge was not a good idea. All this while Yami reached the mansion and saw the dead guards and the beheaded Gato. Yami took Gato's head and stored it. He entered the treasury and as expected it was empty. He looked at the empty treasury and muttered, "I didn't save you both because I took pity on how you died in the cannon, but because I felt you were more useful to me alive than dead. But if seeing all this wealth you got greedy, then I won't hesitate to kill you and Haku." Yami disappeared into bats and flew toward Tazuna's house. He saw that the villagers were cheering and congratulating for Tazuna. When Yami reached there, they were all just leaving. Yami entered through the backyard, which was quiet. As he entered, he saw everybody sitting there. Neji and Sasuke were covered in tape. Tsunami and Sakura went a little overboard with this. Yami thought. As Guy saw Yami, he asked, "Has everything been taken care of?" To which Yami nodded and threw 2 scrolls at him. On the way, he collected the scroll filled with bandit heads from his clones. Naruto was narrating the entire ordeal on the bridge to Inari. He did leave out some gruesome parts to make the story kid-friendly. Inari had stars in his eyes as he heard everything. "Guy, we should leave from here in a day or 2. Kakashi said to my guy. "What's the rush? Why don't you guys stay a few days?" Tsunami, who was sitting with Sakura, asked. "No, we can't. This mission has already taken way longer than the village anticipated. As soon as Neji's and Sasuke's injuries are healed, we will have to leave," Kakashi said. Both the teams enjoyed the hospitality of Tazuna's family and the villagers for the next day. One of the biggest differences this time was the bridge wasn't named the Naruto Bridge. Chapter 105, Bustling Village. The next day, everyone was getting ready to leave. They were all packing their stuff. Tsunami had packed a lot of food for the 2 groups and Sakura was helping her. This mission had taught Sakura a lot. Not in terms of skills and strength, but what a shinobi goes through. She had been a little quiet since yesterday, but that didn't bother Kakashi, as he knew something like this was bound to happen. He had seen many Genins quit being shinobi only because they cannot handle all this bloodshed. Lee and Neji shared the same room while Sasuke and Yami shared a room. Lee was already ready with his stuff and went outside the house with Guy. Neji was busy packing in the room with his back at the door. He suddenly heard the door open slowly. Neji looked back and saw Yami standing at the door. Yami wasn't coming in, nor was he saying anything, which confused Neji. Why is he here? He has never taken the initiative to come to me. He always has a cold expression, but this time I can't feel the coldness and aloofness from him. Neji thought. He asked, "What is it, Yami? Do you think Tazuna would be alive and his bridge would have been built if he accepted his destiny?" Yami asked. Neji frowned when he heard that, as the word destiny rang a bell in his head, and a loud one. He had always been told that his destiny was to serve the main clan, and that's one of the reasons he hated the main family as well as Hinata. He even believed that his father was made a scapegoat by the main family and killed. "What do you mean, Yami? You aren't one to beat around the bushes, so say what you want." "I will say the same thing I said when we first met. You are weak. But now you aren't just weaker than me, but also weaker than old man Tazuna." He had the courage to stand up to his destiny and fight against it rather than accepting it and directing hatred toward others. "You are weaker than Naruto, who failed the graduation exams twice because his clones were pathetic, but now Shadow Clone is his most powerful jutsu. You are weaker than Lee, to whom everyone said that he couldn't become a shinobi because he can't use chakra. But he fought against his destiny, and today he is a shinobi with taijutsu skills enough to rival a jonin. What I want is for you to open your mind and think. Because someone who accepts his destiny and cries about it is a person with a weak mind. And a shinobi with a weak mind is a weak shinobi, and I have no intention of keeping a weak shinobi in my squad," Yami said and left. He did this not just to copy the fight between Neji and Naruto in the canon, because Yami always felt that Neji had stopped working hard like before after he reconciled with the main clan. He did become a jonin before others, but his strength didn't see much increase because he wasn't as ambitious as before. Yami only wanted Neji to realize all this himself rather than getting beat by Naruto. Neji sat there like a statue staring at the open door when Yami stood a few seconds ago. His mind was a mess. He was angry that Yami called him weak. He knew he was weaker than Yami, but he always saw himself as superior to Lee and Naruto. But now Yami had touched a lot of his open wounds. Neji subconsciously activated his Byakugan and grit his teeth. How dare he? He called me weaker than Lee. Weaker than Naruto. An idiot who is all talk and no bite. And weak than Tazuna. Neji thought as he was gritting his teeth. But suddenly Yami's words echoed in his mind, directing hatred toward others. Open your mind and think. Neji instantly became calm. He realized that he was doing just what Yami pointed out. Directing his inner hatred toward others. Do I really hate the main clan? Did they really kill my father? What has Hinata and Hanabi done for me to hate them? Have I accepted my destiny? Can I change it like others did? A long list of questions started popping in Neji's mind. He decided that he will talk to the patriarch after he reaches the village. As Yami said, he won't give up just because someone said his destiny is to serve the main clan. After a few minutes, Team 7 and Team 9 left the Land of Waves. There were some tears in the eyes of Tsunami and Inari, but Sakura and Naruto promised to visit again in the future. The two teams kept traveling toward the hidden village. Neji was quiet the whole time. He didn't interact with anyone. Guy and Kakashi did notice it, but they knew that Neji was the quiet type, so he won't say anything even if they asked him. After a day of traveling, the two teams reached the Hidden Leaf Village. While entering the village, they saw that the village was more crowded than usual. There were many merchants from all over the Land of Fire, and some had even come from other lands. Looks like the Chunin exams are near. Every time of the year the village is bustling with people wanting to do business. Yami thought. Kakashi and Guy left to give Hiruzen the report, and the kids were free to go. Neji left without saying anything. Naruto was also feeling hungry, so he went to Ichiraku's. Yami, should we go home or you need anything from the market? Sasuke asked. Yami thought for a few seconds and said, let's go and meet old man Jiro. Sasuke tilted his face and asked, are you facing some problem with your sword? Now, I need something made. I do have the design in mind, but I am sure with the expertise of Grandpa Jiro it can be made. If it turns out good, then you should get one as well. Yami said. Me too? But don't we have our sword as a weapon? Sasuke asked, still confused. You ask a lot of questions, big brother. Let's go already. Yami said as he dragged Sasuke toward the blacksmith shop. A small smile appeared on Sasuke's face when he heard Yami call him big brother. Times like these make Sasuke forget that Yami isn't just a stronger shinobi but also his little brother. Sasuke happily let Yami drag him to Jiro's blacksmith shop. Chapter 106, Hidden Blade. After reaching in front of the blacksmith shop, Yami knocked on the door as usual. After a few seconds, the door opened. But instead of Seimo, who usually opened the door, this time it was Benji. Seeing Yami and Sasuke at the door, a smile appeared on Benji's face as he said, Yami, Sasuke, what a nice surprise. Come in, both of you. Yami looked around and asked Uncle Benji, where is Seimo? How come you are at the counter today? Benji puffed his chest out and said father sent him to become an apprentice of a friend of his who is a respected blacksmith in the Land of Iron. Father said that his friend is a very reputed blacksmith in the Land of Iron, so I am nothing but a proud dad. Just last week we got the letter that he has become an apprentice. Sasuke nodded and said the Land of Iron is a neutral country, so it is good for the village that someone higher up there has taken in our village's kid as an apprentice. Benji smirked and said when the village found out that he had the chance to become an apprentice, they sent him in a carriage with shinobis as bodyguards. By the way, what brought you two here? Yami took out a rolled piece of paper from his hoodie and handed it to Benji. He then said, I needed this made for me. I won't decide with what to make or who will make it, as I believe you and Grandpa Jiro can take that decision. Yami clarified. Benji opened the rolled sheet of paper and started looking at the drawing drawn on it. He kept making different faces like confusion, frowning, and even nods of understanding. He then looked back at Yami and then at Sasuke as he asked, "Sasuke, have you seen this?" "Nope, he didn't let me see anything. He just dragged me here. We just came back from a long tiring mission," Sasuke said in a slightly complaining tone. "Yami, I must say this is a really innovative design, but some part of it is missing," Benji said. Yami nodded and said, "I know that. I do know how to make the mechanism activate through mechanical movements, but I wonder if you and Grandpa Jiro can come up with a more effective way to activate it," he said with a sly smile on his face. Benji understood that smile as he said, "You little devil. You want to trigger the mechanism with chakra. Which means you want to make the blade with chakra conducting metal as well." "Hee hee, you know me well, Uncle Benji. And not just that, I have another requirement as well," Yami said in a slightly embarrassed tone. He felt like he was already pushing his luck. Benji narrowed his eyes and said, "What more could you want in this?" "I want the bracers to be thin enough that after putting my hoodie or kimono sleeve on, they should not show any bulk on the outside, and I want the bracers to be tough enough that I can stop a sword strike. Not with a chakra nature applied on it though." Yami listed his requirements. "Fine, I do have some ideas, but I will confirm them with my father first. This is gonna take a few days, Yami, and probably some trial and error as well." Yami nodded and said, "Then I will leave you to it, Uncle Benji," and left with Sasuke. As they were walking toward their home, Sasuke said, "Yami, if you don't mind, can I ask you something?" Yami looked at his brother for a few seconds and said, "Sure, what is it? Why did you have to go alone and kill those shinobi bandits? You could have taken your own squad or me." Yami chuckled as he patted his brother's shoulder and said, "Why are you worrying about such a trivial thing, Sasuke? Those weren't exactly shinobis, some of them were, and they were even weaker than Genins. Only their leaders had formal shinobi training, while the bandits only used their chakra to get an edge while displaying their strength." Sasuke was a little relieved after that, but then he thought, what if Yami is only saying this to make me feel comfortable? But he may be right. When he came back, he didn't have any injuries, which means the opponents were really weak. I wonder if I would be able to do something like this. The Uchiha brothers both headed toward their home talking about stuff. In another part of the village, in the Hokage building, 6 people were in a room. These were Kakashi, Might Guy, Asuma, Kurenai, Irika, and the Hokage Hiruzen himself. Hiruzen looked at Kakashi and Guy and said, "It is good that both teams 7 and 9 are back from the mission. I had just called Asuma and Kurenai to ask them if they want to enter their squad in the Chunin exams." Kakashi gave Hiruzen a small bow and said, "Hokage-sama, I apologize for letting a C-rank mission go to the extent of an A rank. I hadn't anticipated this outcome." Hiruzen waved his hand and said, "Kakashi, it's not much. I understand why you let the mission continue. I hope that things went the way you wanted in the end." Kakashi nodded and passed a few scrolls to Hiruzen, which contained the report and also the severed heads. Hiruzen read the report while the others waited patiently. He glanced at Guy and Kakashi from time to time. Kakashi had written about Yami killing the shinobi mercenaries, and also that except for him, Sasuke and Neji, no one knew about it. Hiruzen decided not to discuss anything about the report, as the opponents were normal bandits and not shinobis of one of the 5 great villages. Hiruzen kept the scrolls aside and looked at Guy and said, "Guy, do you think this time your squad can participate in the Chunin exams?" Hiruzen had stopped Guy from having his team participate in the past 2 Chunin exams, and Guy didn't ask the reason, as he knew that it doesn't matter. For him, the only thing that mattered was the overall strength of his students, and Guy was more than happy with his students. Each of his students was stronger than an average Chunin. Guy had already guessed that Yami can go against Jonin and even suppress them. As for Lee, he was performing well with Guy's motivation, and his training in the 8 gates was going better than Guy expected. Chapter 107, Furious Grandpa. Hearing what Hiruzen just asked, Guy gave a big smile and said, "Hokage-sama, my students are more than ready for it. I know that they can easily become Chunin now. Normally when a Jonin instructor would say such words, then everyone would think that it's obvious for an instructor to have such confidence in her students, but when Guy said it, everyone present in the office thought of his students. Yami, Niji, and Lee, all three are strong enough to single-handedly take down a Jonin squad. My squad is filled with lazy asses. Asuma thought as he looked at Guy. Hiruzen nodded and then looked at Kakashi, Asuma, and Kurenai. What about the three of you? Would you like to enter your squad in the Chunin exams as well? All three of them nodded. Unlike in the canon, Iruka didn't intervene this time. He had seen Naruto and Sasuke spar on multiple occasions, so he knew that Naruto could handle himself and his squad in the Chunin exams. I have already started training my squad for the Chunin exams, Kurenai said proudly. After that spar with Yami, my students have also started training with renowned vigor, Asuma said. He did see a big change in his students after Yami gave them a beatdown. All three of his students had stepped up their practice in training their clan's jutsus. Kakashi and Guy had a confused expressions when they heard this. Kakashi quickly asked, when did Yami spar with your students and why? According to Kakashi, Yami wouldn't do anything without a good reason, and there wasn't any debate as to who is stronger between Yami and the other Genins, so why would Yami even entertain the idea of a spar with newly graduated Genins? Asuma explained to them what happened before and during the fight. Nothing surprised Kakashi and Guy, as they already knew how strong Yami was. I'd say he went really easy on them, Kakashi said, to which Guy smirked. Yeah, we know that already. All the injuries faced by our students were cured in a single hospital visit. In my team, the one who has been motivated the most is Kiba Inuzuka. Yami literally toyed with him and his dog, so he started going to the mountain behind the village to train every day. Shino Aburame is also giving some attention to taijutsu instead of being completely dependent on his clan's bug jutsus, Kurenai said. She had seen a massive improvement in the morale of her two students. Hinata was also training more than before, but her timid personality limited her in every way. Hinata did say that her little sister Hanabi has stepped up her training and is going full throttle. Guy looked at Asuma and Kurenai and said Yami won't go easy on them during the Chunin exams. Asuma sighed and said, I wish he doesn't appear in front of my students in the Chunin exams or they won't stand a chance. They are improving, but not enough to defeat a monster like Yami. Ino was a bit shaken up from having her consciousness transferred to a dog, but she is doing good. Inochi is happy that her daughter is spending time with him training, but he doesn't like the motivation. Kurenai chuckled as she said, that's obvious. Ino is his princess and Yami is the one taking her away from him. Every father will react that way. Asuma and Kurenai looked at each other for a second and suddenly looked away. Everyone noticed that, but didn't say anything except Kakashi, who had the habit of teasing these two. Are we still talking about Ino, Kurenai? Kakashi asked. A slight blush appeared on her face when she heard that, but she didn't say anything. Cough cough, so these are the forms you must have your students fill, Hiruzen said as he placed a bunch of forms on the table. Everyone instantly straightened their back. For a minute they all forgot that they were in front of the Hokage. All four of them picked up the forms and left the room. After they left, Hiruzen looked at Iruka and asked, have the Genin teams from the other villages arrived? Iruka nodded and said yes, almost everyone has arrived except the team from the Hidden Sand. They will arrive tonight or tomorrow morning. Shikaku is busy arranging things with Aoba. Hiruzen nodded after he heard that things were going smoothly. He had an odd feeling for the past few days, and his best friend Danzo was also quiet for the past week or two. He didn't arrange meetings, and when Hiruzen went to meet him, Danzo sounded angry and irritated as if someone had taken a toy from a kid. Hyuga Patriarch Residence. The current patriarch of the Hyuga clan, Hayashi Hyuga, was sitting in a big hall with the clan's elder, who was also his father. They both were drinking tea quietly when someone knocked on the door. Hayashi looked at the door and said, what is it? The person on the other side of the door said, Niji Hyuga is here and he requests to meet the patriarch and the elder personally. Hayashi looked at his father and asked, looks like he returned from his mission. But why is he here all of a sudden? Elder took a deep breath and said he must be here to ask for a new jutsu. The elder had some remorse for what was happening to Niji. With his talent and strong Kekkei Jinkai he could easily become the next patriarch, but he was the son of Hizashi who isn't of the main clan. Hayashi looked at the door and said, "Let him in." The figure outside didn't say anything, and a few seconds later the door opened. Niji, who had his travel bag with him, entered the hall. Hayashi and his father noticed this but didn't say anything. Niji bowed and then sat down across the table from them. He then looked at his grandpa, who had a serious expression, and then toward Hayashi. "There is something I wanted to ask you about," Niji said. "What is it?" Hayashi asked. "Is it true that you and Grandpa killed my father as a scapegoat?" Niji asked. He knew that this question could get him killed, but he had heard such rumors all over the branch clan, so he had no option other than to ask the patriarch directly, or else just keep piling up the anger that he was doing in the past few years. "How dare you!" the elder shouted as he activated his Byakugan. Chapter 108, Bound by Fate? Seeing the elder furious and his Byakugan activated, Hayashi quickly blocked the elder from doing anything to Niji. "Elder, please calm down, don't take his words to heart," Hayashi said. He had left his usual cold demeanor because he knew how strict his father was. "How dare he ask us this?" the elder roared, still furious at Niji. He was hurt by the fact that someone accused him of being so ill-willed at his younger son that he killed him. The usually calm Hyuga elder had completely lost his cool. After a few seconds, the elder calmed down a little and sat back down. Hayashi looked at Niji, who was trying to maintain a tough face, and asked, "Why would you ask this, Niji?" "That's what everyone says. I also know that no matter how skilled and strong I am, I can never be anything more than a servant of the main clan. This curse mark had bound my fate," Niji said, clenching his fists tightly. Hayashi and the elder could see the pained expression on his face. They also missed Hizashi, but they could never tell anyone what really happened that day. Hayashi looked at his father and said, "Father." The elder looked at Hayashi and understood that Hayashi wasn't speaking as the patriarch of the Hyuga clan but as his son, Hizashi's brother, and Niji's uncle. The elder took a deep breath and looked at Niji, whose fists already had a little blood coming out from them because of his own nails stabbing his palms. He also saw that Niji's hatred for the main clan was increasing over the past few years, and very soon, if not corrected, could become a poison that could have the Hyuga clan to suffer a fate similar to that of the Uchihas. The elder looked at Niji, who was facing the ground trying to hold back his tears, and said, "Look at me, Niji." Niji quickly looked up at his grandpa. "What I am about to tell you should never be known to anyone outside this room, including your sisters. It all started when the Kumo envoy came to our village. Someone from the envoy tried to kidnap Hinata on the night of her birthday, but Hayashi killed that man. The Kumos became furious at this and accused us of killing their man for no reason. They knew that our village wasn't in a state stable enough to start a war with the Land of Lightning, so they tried to leverage this man's death to get their hands on Hayashi's eyes. Hayashi was ready to die for the peace of the village and pass the seat of patriarch to your father Hizashi. But your father sneaked attacked Hayashi and knocked him out and replaced himself in Hayashi's place, sacrificing his life. His being of the branch clan had the curse mark on him, which made the Kumo ninjas unable to extract any secret of the Byakugan. Hizashi's sacrifice stopped our village from going through another war, as well as stopped the secrets of our Kekkei Jinkai from releasing." Niji stared wide-eyed at the elder. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had heard that someone did try to kidnap Hinata on the night of her birthday, but he didn't know all this had happened that day. He looked at Hayashi, who had a tear streaming down his eyes. He looked saddened. Niji wanted to cry, scream and ask his uncle why they let his father die, but he knew that his father was the kind of man to sacrifice his life for others, especially his family. "Wait a minute," Hayashi said as he stood up and went near the big photo of Hizashi hanging on the wall. He then put his hand behind the photo and pulled out a white envelope. Hayashi then placed the envelope on the table in front of Niji. Niji looked at the envelope and then at Hayashi and asked, "What is this?" "This is the letter your father wrote for you before he sacrificed himself. He told father to give it to you when you were ready to know the truth. He didn't want you to grow to hate the family he loved enough to sacrifice his life for." I have been ridden with the guilt that my own brother died for me. Every time I see you, you remind me of him. Hayashi said. The elder looked at Neji and said Neji Hinata, and Hanabi's mother died right after giving birth to Hanabi. If Hayashi would have died as well, then the entire main clan would have collapsed. The branch clan would have surely taken up the place of the main clan, but due to our Kekai Jinkai there are always vultures keeping an eye on our clan. If it wasn't for all these reasons, I would have stopped Hizashi at all costs. I haven't read that letter because it was something from a father to his son, and even as an elder or as a patriarch we have no right to open it. Neji understood what they meant and opened the envelope. He opened the letter inside it and began reading. After each line, his hands started shivering and tears streamed down his eyes. The letter did explain the same things that Hizashi and the elder told him. So all this time the things I thought about the main clan were all wrong? I thought the patriarch made his own brother into a scapegoat to solidify his and his children's positions as that of the main clan, but after listening to what they said and this letter, the patriarch himself is suffering in guilt. I thought I was being sent to the academy to keep me away from the main clan jutsus, but according to the letter, this was one of the wishes he told the elder. He wanted me to see the outside world and not stay cooped up in the clan. But there was a line that caught Neji's attention. Neji, my son, I never saw you restrained or bound by your destiny as someone from the branch clan. In fact, I saw you as someone who has the potential and the chance to become bigger than our clan's patriarch. Make me and your mother proud, son. Break those restraints you have bound your own mind in and protect the family and clan that I died protecting. I will watch over you, always. Chapter 109, We Meet Again. Neji couldn't control himself after reading the last line and started sobbing. The tears that he had held up all these years started coming out. The elder went and sat beside Neji and started to rub his back. He wasn't doing it as the clan's elder but as Neji's grandfather. All these years he maintained a tough stance, but deep inside he mourned the death of his son. I will go back to my room and rest. I have to meet my team tomorrow, Neji said as he left. He left the letter on the table for Hayashi and the elder to read. Even though the letter was for him, Neji knew that the elder and Hayashi must be curious. Hayashi nodded as he knew Neji had gone through a lot, and now all the truth being dumped on him will also have its effects. Hayashi and his father noticed that Neji's tone just now wasn't cold and stoic like always. Now his tone contained a feeling of familiarity. The elder picked up the letter and sat with Hayashi to read it. After a few seconds, the elder chuckled as he said, even without knowing I would have told you that Hizashi wrote this. Among the two of you, he was the soft one, but he always saw that softness of his as a boon rather than something that would make him weak. Father, I still think you must rethink whether or not to make Neji the patriarch. Hinata isn't suitable for it and Hanabi is strong, but she is nowhere near Neji in terms of talent, Hayashi said. The elder waved his hand and said in a stern tone, I cannot do that, Hayashi. We can't change the rules passed down by our ancestors per our convenience. Even Hizashi knows this, or else why would he have his son keep living in the branch clan? We do not do this just as the pride of being a firstborn, but because if this system isn't followed, then there is a chance that our Kekai Jinkai bloodline may become diluted. Byakugan isn't as dominant as the Sharingan. Hayashi didn't say anything and continued to sit in the room. Just like this, the entire day ended. Neji had a lot to think, so he stayed in his room for the rest of the day. The words of Yami telling him to open his mind kept echoing in Neji's mind. Today, after reading the letter, Neji felt like a large amount of weight was taken off his chest. The next day Sasuke and Yami both went to their respective squads. They knew that their sensei will tell them about the Chunin exams and stuff. Team 9 Training Ground. Might Guy looked at his team, who he has to agree that is the strongest Genin team he has ever seen. This time you guys will be participating in the Chunin exams, Guy declared. He expected a big hooray, but only Lee cheered. Yes, now we can fight those Genins from the other villages. I might even be able to impress Sakura. Aren't you two guys excited? Lee asked his two teammates who were standing quietly. Neji was one who responded to this question. We could have become shunins a few months after we graduated, but Sensei and Hokage-sama wanted us to ease our strength so that we don't get targeted too early. Now we have the chance to whitewash the Genins from other villages. So this exam is no big deal for us. Coldness in his voice is gone, looks like he faced his demons after all. Yami thought as he looked at Niji, who didn't have that arrogant demeanor anymore. These are your forms. Fill them and submit it in the academy. I have to meet Kakashi, so I will leave now. We will meet tomorrow for practice, Guy said as he left. Yami and his teammates also decided to leave the training ground. A few seconds after they left, Yami heard a few voices coming from the street ahead. Such loud voice, must be Naruto and Sakura, and isn't that Kankuro's voice if I am not mistaken? Yami thought. As he came near the street, he saw that Kankuro had held up Konohamaru by the collar and Naruto had fallen down after being tripped by Kankuro's chakra string. Let him go. Naruto shouted at Kankuro, who had a smirk on his face. Temari was standing behind him observing everything. Konohamaru was trying his best to loosen Kankuro's grip. Brat, do you think it is so easy to free yourself from my grip? Kankuro sneered as he pulled one of his hands back to punch Konohamaru, but then a pebble hit his wrist in high speed. Arg! Kankuro made a short pain-filled sound and dropped Konohamaru on the ground. He looked around as to who threw it, but then he noticed that there was a boy his age sitting on the tree beside him. Kankuro glared at the boy while Temari also noticed him and smiled a little. Who the hell are you? Kankuro asked in an irritated voice. Is this how you behave in someone else's village? Sasuke asked in a mocking tone. You. Kankuro said as he was getting ready to unwrap his puppet, but then Gaara's voice resounded from a branch behind Sasuke. Stop embarrassing us, Kankuro. Sasuke quickly looked back and saw Gaara hanging upside down from the branch. Yami had told Sasuke about Kazekage's kids he had met during his mission. I didn't even know that he was standing there. What's in the gourd on his back? Sasuke had many questions, but he had to keep his cool in front of others, so he stayed quiet. But Gaara, this brat bumped into me. Kankuro tried to explain, but Gaara stopped him. Stop it now or else I'll. Look who's here. A voice fell on everybody's ears. The voice came in the direction of Gaara. Gaara looked up and saw Yami standing on the same branch. Even Sasuke was stunned when he saw that. When did Yami appear? And how did me and this Gaara guy both miss him standing on the branch? Yami Uchiha, Gaara said as he looked at Yami and jumped down beside his teammates. Chapter 110, Are they worthy? Kankuro and Temari also looked at Yami. Both were thankful to Yami for saving Temari's life during the Bandit Valley mission last year, but they knew that right now they were here as enemies. Kankuro was about to say something, but then he sensed movement on his other side. When he turned in that direction, he saw that Lee was standing beside him while Niji was standing beside Temari. Lee looked at Kankuro and said, attacking the Hokage's grandson the same day you come to our village, you guys are up to no good. After hearing that, Kankuro quickly looked at Konohamaru. This little pipsqueak is the Hokage's grandson? Thankfully Gaara stopped me before escalating, or else this would become a big problem. Kankuro wanted to get away from all this without escalating, but he couldn't just back off. He and his siblings were representing their village, so backing off like this could bring shame to the hidden sand. He turned back to stare at Yami and said, if you think that just because this brat is your Hokage's grandson, then you. Yami interrupted him by saying, shut up, your words hold no weight and we both know it, so don't bother arguing. These words brought a small smile to all the Hidden Leaf Genins present there. They didn't expect Yami to blatantly insult Kankuro like that. You, Kankuro said with a little angry expression, but Yami ignored him and looked at Gaara. I hope we will meet during the exams. Yami said. I will be waiting. Gaara replied. This whole time he didn't bother saving face for his elder brother. He knew the village saw him as a tool of destruction, so for them to be insulted meant nothing to him. Gaara glanced at Sasuke once and then said, let's go. Kankuro and Temari followed him. Kankuro cursed Yami several times in his heart but didn't say a word. Naruto helped Konohamaru get up and checked whether he was hurt anywhere. Naruto then looked at Yami and his teammates and said, "Thank you for the help, guys." Sakura, who was standing at the back the entire time, also hurried forward and with a small bow said, "Yes, he is right, thank you, anything for you, Sakura." Lee quickly said, coming near Sakura. This creeped out her a little, so she instantly slapped him. "Eek, sorry you scared me," Sakura said with a worried expression on his face. Lee just gave an embarrassing laugh. He was a taijutsu specialist, so just a simple slap won't even hurt him. Neji sighed seeing the antics of his teammate. He then looked at Yami and said, "We should leave. We still haven't submitted our forms. I'll see you later." Yami told Sasuke and left with his teammates. The next day Yami and Sasuke were walking toward the academy. Today was the first test of the Chunin exams. There wasn't much to be excited about this, nor there was a need to prepare much for it. As Yami reached at the academy gate, he saw that Neji and Lee were already there. Sasuke patted Yami's shoulder and said, "I'll wait for my teammates. Naruto will be late as always, so you go ahead. And all the best, not that you need it." Yami chuckled and said, "We should have sent a shadow clone instead of coming here ourselves. I don't want you to take any chances in the Chunin exam, so don't fool around," Sasuke said in an elderly tone. Yami bid goodbye to his brother and left. He met up with his teammates and entered the academy. "So, are you both excited?" Lee asked. Yami and Neji could see that his excitement was overflowing. "This is just a written exam. Why are you so hyped up?" Neji asked. He had changed his demeanor toward Lee and the others. Lee, as oblivious as ever, didn't even notice the change. Yami guessed that Hayashi must have told him the truth, which is what changed Neji to such an extent. "Come on, both of you, don't tell me you guys aren't the least bit excited to fight Genins from other villages," Lee said. Neji didn't reply to that as he wanted to see what Yami says. Yami looked at Lee and asked, "Do you want to fight them to see their strength or to show them how strong you are?" Lee was confused by the question Yami just asked and went into deep thought. Neji understood what Yami meant, and also that Lee wasn't eager to see others fight but to show others that he can defeat them even without using chakra. "How are you able to think in such a way, Yami?" Neji thought as he looked at his teammate, who was a couple of years younger than him. After walking for a few seconds, they reached a floor where many kids were gathered. They were standing in front of a door that read Room 301. This was the room specified in the form and was the venue where the form should be submitted. "This is the room we need to go in. Looks like it's guarded by 2 people. Lee said that 2 people who looked like their seniors were standing outside the door blocking the kids from going in. "Should we fight them?" Neji asked while looking at the 2 seniors. "Are they even worthy?" Yami asked in a low tone. "Who? Those 2? Lee asked with a confused tone. "No. These Genins who are being fooled by such a simple illusion," Yami said as he turned to climb the stairs. While climbing he said, "Kotetsu and Izumo, I hope you guys are doing good." The 2 seniors instantly looked at Yami and smirked. They knew someone like Yami will see through their illusion easily. They had set a weak illusion only to fool the weaker Genins. "Huh?" Lee was more confused after hearing this. Neji activated his Byakugan and saw that it was actually an illusion, and the number of the door plate was 201 instead of 301. "So this is the wrong floor, and those looking as our seniors are Kotetsu and Izumo, who guard the main gate." Yami recognized this instantly and didn't even have to use his Sharingan. He said that the Genins who can't see through a weak illusion like this aren't worthy. "Did it include me as well?" Neji thought, but he and Lee quickly followed him upstairs. This whole thing wasn't too eye-catching. So many Genins didn't even notice all this happening and still stood in front of room 201 thinking how to fight the 2 seniors. Chapter 111, The Snake's Apprentice. As they reached the next floor, they saw an open door with the nameplate 301 on it. As they entered inside, they saw shinobis from various villages had gathered there. Some looked their age, but most of them were much older than Yami and his teammates. As they entered the room, all guys focused on them. Yami's squad was the first Leaf Genin squad there. It was obvious that everyone wanted to target them. In every Chunin exam, the shinobis from other villages would target the shinobis who had a home ground advantage, as this could prove fatal to the foreign shinobis. It wasn't a secret that the home ground shinobis were favored by the examiners and they had a higher chance of becoming Chunin. Some even radiated faint killing intent toward Yami and his squad mates. The ones who were doing it blatantly were the shinobis from the Hidden Sound. Their leader had tape wrapped around his head and only one of his eyes was visible. He also wore suspiciously long sleeves which had even crossed his knees. This guy must be Dosu, the one who had a resonating speaker on his arms. Yami thought. He had seen the anime but couldn't remember the small characters. On his left was a guy wearing a brown half-sleeve shirt and on his right was a girl wearing a sleeveless jacket and faint purple and black pants. These people look a little scary, Lee murmured while moving his head a little closer to Niji. A small number of Genins are promoted to Chunin, so it is obvious that most of the shinobis here are here after multiple attempts. Niji answered as he looked at the foreign shinobis. He was a little bothered by the killing intent, but seeing that his teammates didn't give much attention, he decided to ignore it as well. "Are you kids in the wrong place?" a shinobi from the Hidden Mist asked. He and his teammates looked like they were 13 to 14 years of age. He directed the question at Yami, who looked the youngest among them. Yami's height was the same as Niji and Lee, but his innocent face clearly displayed that he was too young to be among this crowd. Some shinobis from the Hidden Stone also sneered at that. Yami could see that they wanted to crush him and bury him in the ground. People in this world really don't need a reason to hurt each other. Yami thought as he ignored the question asked by the Mist Shinobi. This angered the Mist Shinobi, but then he heard a few talking noises coming from the door. Everyone started looking at the door except Yami, as he already knew that this sound was of chips being munched on. It was none other than Team 10 who entered the room. They also saw the room full of shinobis. Ino looked scared as she glanced at them. Shikamaru, who always had a bored expression, looked alert for some reason. He had sensed the killing intent and wanted to be careful. As Ino saw Yami standing in a corner with his teammates, she wanted to go and greet him, but then another squad entered the room. It was none other than Team 8. The quiet Shino stepped in and stood beside Choji, who was oblivious to everything going around him. He was focused on the chips he was munching on. Seeing so many people, Akamaru, who was sitting on top of Kiba's head, jumped into his jacket and hid. Animals can detect the slightest hostilities, and this was the first time for Akamaru to detect so much together. Hinata went and greeted Ino. She was happy to see that she wasn't alone here and had someone to talk to. Hi Ino, are you guys ready? Hinata asked. Seeing Hinata's scared face, Ino decided to stay with her and comfort her. Hinata, you haven't changed a bit. Don't be so nervous, we don't have to be scared of all these people. That's right, came a shout from the door again. Why can't these idiots come together? Why do they need to make an entry every 10 seconds? Yami thought as he shook his head. Yami left an eye on him. At first, he ignored it, but even after two more squads entered the room, one set of eyes was still on him. Yami looked in that particular direction and saw a man with round glasses and a ponytail tied in the back. Kabuto, how did I forget such an annoying character? If I want to finish him, then I need to do it before the war. Later in the canon, after making a breakthrough in the hydrification technique of the Hozuki clan, he becomes hard to kill just like Orochimaru. I do admire his tenacity though. He laid low with his head bowed until he became strong enough. Killing him would potentially cancel the reanimation of all the dead good characters during the war, and by that I mean the 4 Hokages. I am still not sure of defeating Orochimaru or people from the Akatsuki. I won't stand a chance during the war in front of Obito and Madara. Yami didn't want to take a decision that he would come to regret later. He decided to keep Kabuto alive until he thinks that he can't handle Madara on his own. While Yami was thinking all this, Kabuto had shifted his attention to Team 7. The noisy Naruto had successfully become the center of everyone's annoyance. You guys need to be a little quiet, Kabuto said as he walked close to them. Who are you? Naruto asked. I am Kabuto. I have attempted the Chunin exams a few times but couldn't get promoted, and there are many like me here. You guys will get targeted by these people if you attract this much attention. Kabuto warned. Ha! I am not scared of anyone. Whoever comes I will defeat them and become a chunin. Naruto shouted, making those who didn't even look at them grit their teeth in annoyance. For them, Naruto was like a bee buzzing around them and irritating them. These guys seem pretty confident, the girl beside Dosu said. Then let's see if they have the skill to back it up. Dosu said in a cold tone. Chapter 112, Kabuto's Info Cards. Between Dosu and Naruto and said, calm down guys, this isn't the right place to fight. Dosu was quite annoyed by Kabuto, so he sneered and said, you better get out of my way 4 eyes or else I will have to make you. Kabuto chuckled and said, I am not as weak as I look. But you just said you failed the chunin exams several times. Naruto muttered. From the side, Yami along with his team, and Gaara along with his team were observing. They didn't want to interfere in such minor scuffles. As far as I remember, the scuffle between Kabuto and the Sound Shinobis should have happened after he revealed some info about the participants and the hidden Sound Village. Things have started to change even without my intervention. Only time will tell whether this is good or bad. Yami thought while seeing the Sound Ninjas were running around the room waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Dosu's last teammate had also joined in by now. Kabuto kept looking at different places in the room. He was trying to figure out where the attack will come from. The third teammate Zaku took out 2 kunai from his pocket and threw them toward Kabuto. The speed wasn't much, but suddenly a punch of air came out from Zaku's palm. This air increased the speed of the kunai twofold. Kabuto quickly jumped sideways to dodge the kunai. He easily escaped one of the kunais, but the second one tore through the ending of his clothes. Zaku grinned as he saw that. He knew that if he throws more such kunai then he is sure to hit Kabuto. Dosu appeared in front of Kabuto and threw a punch. Kabuto stumbled back 2 steps, but he was successful in avoiding the punch. That metal thing on his arms, what is that? Niji thought as he saw Dosu throw the punch. Dosu's hands vibrated and he threw a few more punches. Kabuto dodged almost all of the punches, but the last one grazed his glasses, which shattered them. Is this the best the Sound Village has to offer? Kabuto chuckled, but the next minute he felt nauseous. He quickly spat some blood and kneeled down. Huh? What's happening? Naruto asked, and everyone around him was wondering the same thing. Using sound to do damage was an extremely rare thing, and most Genins didn't even know this technique existed. Naruto's team and the other 2 teams rushed to help Kabuto up. Sasuke, who a few minutes ago was also wondering how Dosu inflicted internal damage onto Kabuto, had understood that Dosu was using sound. Dosu looked at Naruto, who was helping Kabuto. His original target was Naruto because of the provocative words. He took a step forward, but then his female teammate Kin stopped him. Let it be Dosu. We will get many chances during the exam to fight with him. Let's go for now, Kin said. Dosu looked at Zaku, who nodded. Fine, let's go, but I will take care of this yellow-haired kid myself, Dosu said as he walked away with his team. Sakura asked Kabuto, are you alright? Should we call a medical team? Kabuto shook his head and said no. No need. They are proficient in sound techniques and I should have anticipated that attack. Dosu really is as short-tempered as I have heard. How do you know so much about him? Kiba asked. Collecting information about other participants is what I do. I sell information about other participants before the Chunin exams so that they don't get caught off guard while fighting. Today is the day of the exam, so the information is free. You guys can ask anything you want to. Show me Naruto's card, Kiba said. Naruto was also excited to see what was written in his card, so he looked at Kabuto and nodded. Kabuto took out a deck of cards from his pocket. After shuffling through a couple of cards, he selected a card. He put the rest of the deck aside and placed the card on the ground. This card is blank, Sakura said as she saw that the face side of the card was blank. Hee, I have used a little trick to hide the info that is on the cards, Kabuto said. He did some hand seals and touched the card with his pointer finger. A small gust of air spread on all four sides under the card and information started appearing on the card. "Let me see," Kiba said as he picked up the card. Naruto Uzumaki. Age, 12 missions, 6D rank 1B rank best jutsu, shadow clone jutsu. Chakra affinity, unknown. Ino, who was quiet the whole time, looked at the card and then at Sakura and asked, "When did you guys go for a B rank mission? And why would the village send a new squad to such a mission?" Dad said Genins are only allowed D and C rank missions. Sakura had a proud expression hearing that as she said, "Ino pig, we didn't get perform a B rank mission but also completed it." Ino wanted to rebuke but Shikamaru stopped her. "Ino, the village rarely gives a Genin squad rank mission, but it's impossible for them to give it to a squad who has just graduated. They must have gone for a D or C rank mission, and due to increase in difficulty the village must have promoted it to a B rank mission." "Show me the card of Gaara of the Sand," Sasuke said. He had heard about Gaara from his brother, but he still wanted to know how big of an opponent this Gaara is. Kabuto raised his eyebrows as he heard that. He had some idea of how strong Gaara is. He is one of the strongest participants in this Chunin exams, and Sasuke seemed to have taken him as an opponent. Kabuto crouched again and placed another blank card on the ground. After a few hand seals, Gaara's info was displayed on the card. Everyone's eyes widened as they saw this. Even Yami, who was far from this, had a frown on his face. Chapter 113, The First Test. Name, Gaara of the Sand. Age, 13 best jutsu, complete control over sand. Mission record, 5 D rank, 7 C rank, 12 B rank, 4 A rank. How is this even possible? Kiba asked as he looked at Gaara, who was sitting with his eyes closed. "This must be some kind of a joke, isn't it?" Sakura asked as she looked at Kabuto. "Genins aren't given missions above C rank unless there is some special circumstance. How can he do so many B and A rank missions when he is only Genin?" Sasuke asked. He doubted whether this information was true or not. Kabuto shrugged and said that is the case, but Gaara and his teammates are the children of the 4th Kazekage Raza, so it isn't hard for them to get a mission they want. Yami, who was at the side, had a frown on his face as he looked at the card. In the canon, his mission record wasn't this impressive. Looks like my meeting him last year made him grind more and do all these missions. I still don't have an effective way to counter his sand. So, is there anyone else whose card you guys want to see? Kabuto asked, looking at the 3 Konoha Genin teams. They all shook their head as they didn't know many of their opponents. Just when Kabuto was about to put the deck back in his pocket, Shikamaru came forward. "There is someone whose card I want to see," he said. Kabuto raised his eyebrow as he heard this and asked, Sure, tell me. Whose card do you want to see?" Shikamaru looked at Sasuke and then at Kabuto and said, "Yami Uchiha." "Huh, Shikamaru, why do you want to know about Yami?" Ino asked with a confused expression. Yami and Sasuke acted as if they didn't hear Shikamaru. Shikamaru looked at the blonde and said, "Ino, don't forget that in this exam Yami is our opponent. If we can get any information on him, then that will benefit us in the future." Ino wasn't convinced by what Shikamaru said, but she decided not to ask further. She knew Shikamaru liked to observe and evaluate the mindset of others, and Yami was the only one he couldn't evaluate. Ino herself was excited to see what shows up in Yami's card. Name, Yami Uchiha. Age, 9 years old, proficient in Genjutsu, Taijutsu, Kenjutsu. Best Jutsu, unknown. Missions, 10 D rank, 05 C rank, 10 B rank, 07 A rank, 01 S rank. While Ino was the first to express her surprise. This is the first time she had seen a Genin with so many missions. Everyone else was shocked as well as they subconsciously turned toward Yami, who was looking elsewhere. Even Sasuke turned to look at his brother. Yami had told him about a few B-rank missions which had been upgraded due to the circumstance, but A-rank missions and S-rank mission was totally out of his calculation. Sasuke wouldn't have believed this if Yami wasn't his own brother. Yami, who was observing all this, thought this list isn't from someone who collects info randomly. He must have gotten this from Danzo or someone else in the higher-ups. These A and S rank missions were actually B rank missions where I did some things solo while Niji and Lee were oblivious to it. Niji, who was also observing this, wondered, seems like killing those shinobis before the battle in the Land of Waves wasn't the first time Yami ventured out solo. The village even counted it as a mission. Why is his best jutsu unknown? Sakura asked. Everyone looked at Kabuto for the answer. They wanted to know what Yami's strongest jutsu was. Kabuto shrugged and said except his teammates and sensei no one knows his strongest jutsu. I am not even sure whether even they know or not. Hearing this, the group looked at Niji and Lee. Lee couldn't hear all this commotion, so he was busy looking at the foreign shinobis. Niji, who sensed all those eyes on him, looked at the group of Genins and shook his head in denial. Kabuto looked at it and said, seems like even his teammates don't know what his strongest jutsu is. What about his other jutsus? Shikamaru asked. I don't know. There are many who fought against Yami during his missions, and they all have experienced multiple jutsus from him, but none of them lived to tell the tale. So what he did during those fights is still a mystery. Kabuto said, and then he heard the sound of heavy footsteps entering the room. As he looked toward the door, he saw a well-built man with 2 cuts over his face and a Konoha headband on his forehead. The man looked at the Genins and said, I am a beaky Marino, the commanding officer of the Konoha Torture and Interrogation Force. I will also be the proctor of your first exam. He then divided the students into 2 different classes. After a few minutes, when everyone settled down in their respective classes, Ibiki explained the rules and distributed the question and answer papers. Yami was thankful that this part didn't change. He knew he could pass this exam without writing a single word on it, just like Naruto. Things continued as they did in the canon. Eventually, it came time for the 10th question, where many kids left the exam, and then came Naruto's outburst and things ended pretty smoothly. The first exam scene was quite boring for me, so skipped it right away. After the first exam was finished, Ibiki told them that the next exam will be held tomorrow, but he didn't tell them where. Yami felt that the Forest of Death wouldn't have been so scary if it wasn't for Orochimaru's untimely visit. Are you going home or to train? Sasuke asked Yami, who was walking with his squad lost in thought. Neither, I am going to old Grandpa Jiro. What about you? Yami asked. Sasuke waved his hand and said, you go ahead. Kakashi-sensei has called us, so I will meet you later. I hope he teaches me some new jutsu. Sasuke had a little excitement in his voice. Chapter 114, Hidden Blade Part 2. Yami shrugged as he headed toward Jiro's shop. In his previous life, he was a big fan of the Assassin's Creed. From their hood to their hidden blade, and lastly the leap of faith. He thought of trying the leap of faith in this world, but he realized that it was too slow, and by the time he jumps he may have a dozen kunai in his back. As the shop came into his sight, he saw that Grandpa Jiro was sitting outside eating dumplings. He walked close to Grandpa Jiro and asked, Grandpa, why are you sitting outside and eating dango? Yami even tilted his head to peek inside the shop to confirm what had happened inside, but things looked pretty normal and quiet. As Jiro heard that, he made an ugly face and said, Brat, this is all because of you. I have been brainstorming for the past few days to make that design you gave me. I was so immersed in it that I couldn't eat or sleep. Yami's eyes brightened as he heard that. Does that mean you completed the design? Seeing Yami acting his age, Jiro raised his eyebrows and said, Brat, you didn't look this excited when I made that sword for you. Are you looking down on my sword? Yami laughed embarrassedly and said, No. I just couldn't find any way to get the design to work as I wanted it to with chakra. Alright, come with me, Jiro said as he stood up and turned to walk inside his house. Yami followed Jiro inside the shop. He saw that something was kept on the table and covered with a black cloth. Jiro could feel Yami's restlessness while he was walking. This kid, I don't know what has gotten him so riled up. This is the first time I am seeing him like this, Jiro thought as he stood by the table. Do the honors, he said, and Yami quickly nodded. As Yami lifted the black cloth, he saw that the bracers didn't look like he had imagined. They looked like black and bluish scales sewn together. The bottom part was a normal black metal sleeve made to hide the blade. Yami looked at Jiro in confusion. Grandpa Jiro, are you sure this BL? Yami was asking when Jiro rebuked in anger. Brat, do you think I would have used these scales if I wasn't sure that they could meet my expectations? Are these scales that strong? Yami asked as he touched the smooth scales. No, these scales won't protect you from the damaged head, but they will deflect the attack directed at it. My friend from the land of iron gave me these. He said they belonged to a very big snake. Yami frowned a little as he heard that. Could it be some snake from the Ryuchi cave? Damn, is this luck or plot armor? Yami then turned the bracer upside down to take a look at the blade. The first thing he saw was a mechanism similar to what was shown in the Assassin's Creed. This means the blade will be usable even if the person doesn't have chakra. Before Yami could ask, Jiro quickly said, what if your chakra points are sealed? You wanted this weapon to be used to surprise the enemy, so I made it in such a way that you can use it without needing any chakra. However, if you channel chakra through the metal sleeve, then the blade instantly pops out, giving you the instant kill advantage. Yami wore the bracer on his arm and tried the manual mechanism first. He was surprised to see how easy it was even without the need for chakra. Yami then used his chakra and the blade popped out instantly. Yami noticed that the blade was a little hollow from the inside. Now that's a surprise, Yami said, looking at the numerous small holes near the edge of the blade. Jiro chuckled and said, I knew you would like it, kid. The blade is hollow so that after stabbing the knife in someone else's body you can send some fire or wine chakra through it, giving the person a ton of internal injuries. This hollow blade can also be used to hold poison. You have really outdone yourself, old man, Yami said as he wore the bracer and covered it with his sleeve. Due to the flexibility of the bracer made of small scales, it was nearly impossible to guess that there was something under his sleeve. So are you going to use it in the Chunin exams? Jiro asked. Yami shook his head and said no. That would be overkill. Even if people find out its existence, then half of its advantage is lost. The only way to maintain that advantage is to make sure whoever I have used this on doesn't live to tell others. Just like I thought. These Uchihas still give me the creeps. Only 9-year-old and talks like an adult. The shinobi life is truly cruel, Jiro thought. Even though he made weapons and sold them to everybody, he hated the fact that children were trained to kill from such a young age. He knew that not doing it would weaken the village's strength, so he could never say anything about it. He just made sure that his grandson wouldn't be one of those children trained to kill people based on where they were born. Seems like I have grown a little attachment to Yami. I hope he hasn't burdened himself with duties and responsibilities, Jiro thought as he stared at the disappearing back of Yami. He then looked at the table and saw that Yami had kept a couple of thousand ryo as the price of the bracer. Jiro shuffled through the money and his smile instantly disappeared and he shouted, Brad, do you think this is some normal knife I have made for you? I will take 3 times the amount. Yami could hear some sounds due to his super senses, but he decided to ignore it and continue going home. I gave 80% of my monthly allowance and now this old man wants more. I should have taken some of Gato's wealth. Sasuke will visit before the Chunin exam finals to get his equipment checked. At that time he will pay the difference. He at least as the elder brother he can do this for me. Chapter 115, The Disguised Snake. After Yami reached home he saw that Sasuke hadn't come back from his squad meeting yet. Kakashi did tell Yami once that Sasuke would also be suitable to learn Chidori and he was thinking of teaching it to Sasuke so that he can have an ace move during the Chunin exams. This meeting wasn't of Sasuke alone but of the whole team. After a few hours, Sasuke came back home. It was already close to dinner time. Yami had cooked beforehand as he figured that if the meeting didn't end in a few minutes, it would take a few hours. As Sasuke entered he gave Yami a murderous glare. Yami couldn't help but giggle when he saw that. Looks like you went to see Grandpa Jiro. Sasuke grit his teeth and said, you could have contacted me through your summon and told me Grandpa Jiro will pounce on me for the rest of the money the moment he sees any one of us. Yami put 2 bowls of hot soup on the table and said if I did that then I would have to give him money the next time I meet. Hearing this, Sasuke's murderous glare intensified. Where have you spent all the money you gained from so many missions? You must be hungry after training. Come and eat now. What a subtle way to change the topic. Sasuke said sarcastically and sat down at the table. So where do you think tomorrow's round will be held? Sasuke asked as he was devouring the soup. Yami acted like he was thinking for a few seconds and then said, I don't know where, but I am sure it will be based on survival. Sasuke looked up as he heard that and asked, survival? Why would you think that? Isn't it obvious? The first round tested our knowledge and courage, and we know that the last round is always 1v1 matches, so the only option is to see how we can survive in the wild during long-distance missions and how we will do it when other shinobis are on our back. Sasuke nodded as he said, what you said does make sense. So, whip out that bracer that cost me a fortune. Yami nodded and pulled up the sleeves on his left hand. He had specifically put them on this hand to hide the devouring tattoo, as well as if someone sees his devouring, then they might think it is due to this bracer. Seeing the shiny scales on the bracer, Sasuke couldn't help but touch their smooth surface. Are they tough enough to handle a sword? Sasuke asked. Enough to deflect attacks. Yami then popped out the blade with his chakra. He decided to skip the part where the blade can be popped out manually and the holes inside the blade. After talking a few more minutes about the bracer, Sasuke decided that he doesn't need one right now. He is already happy with his sword. The next day, Yami along with his team were waiting in the academy's training ground. There were many teams from different villages there. About 20 to 30% of the participants had failed the first test. A few minutes later, 2 Konoha Jonins appeared on the stage of the ground. I hope everyone who has passed the first test is here. Follow us to the venue of the second exam. Anyone who wants to quit and leave now. But before you come with me, I need you all to sign something. What do we need to sign? A stone Genin asked the Jonin. You need to sign a waiver that if you die during the second exam, then the hidden leaf isn't responsible. Murmurs spread across the training ground. They all wanted to become Chunin, but some of these people didn't want to do something where they have a high chance of death. Some shinobis even snickered seeing the cowardly ones. The second Jonin nodded and started distributing the paper to everyone participating. Even the Konoha Genins were given the same sheet of paper. Sakura was scared when she read it, but then she saw that her 2 teammates had instantly signed without thinking about it for a second, so, in the end, she signed it as well. Follow me now and don't go exploring the village or you might get disqualified, the Jonin said in a stern tone and walked down from the stage. He left through the academy gates and the Genins followed him. They didn't need to walk for long as they reached a faraway training ground which had a forest on one side. The forest had barbed wires stopping it from encroaching on the training ground, and there were many warning labels hung on these barbed fences. The 2 Jonins quickly approached the only person standing on the ground. It was a woman in her 20s with purple hair and purple eyes. She wore a heavily knitted shirt and a brown jacket on top of it. As everyone came, Anko clapped her hands and said, looks like everyone is here. I am Anko Mitarashi, a Konoha Jonin, and the place behind me is called as the Forest of Death. This is the place where you will be staying for the next few days to pass your second test. Anko said while pointing at the dense forest behind her. Yami knew all this, so he didn't give much attention to all the things Anko was blabbering. He suddenly sensed someone's eyes on him. He didn't turn around to look immediately as he knew that this could be Orochimaru himself. Yami had no confidence in defeating someone like Orochimaru, not just because of his strength, but also because the snake had many ways to escape with his life. The cursed seal on Anko is one of them. Neji didn't have the same patience that Yami had. When he sensed the gaze on him, he instantly turned back to see a girl with long hair. She looked beautiful, but Neji was getting a creepy feeling by just seeing her. Seeing Neji turn, Yami wanted to facepalm himself. Hee hee, I thought the Yami didn't sense my gaze, but looks like he did but didn't react. On the other hand, his teammate is too sensitive to it. A Hyuga, as expected of those white-eyed pacifists, the creepy woman thought, flaunting a long tongue. Chapter 116, The Second Test Part 1. Why is that creepy looking at us like that? Neji asked Yami while glancing toward the disguised Orochimaru. Huh, which girl? The oblivious Lee asked, looking around at the participants. Due to his inability to sense chakra, he didn't even notice the snake's gaze on them. Niji knew that explaining this to Lee would be a waste of time, so he ignored Lee and turned to Yami for an explanation. All the participants here are rivals of each other, so it isn't a surprise that someone wants to harm us to secure their position in the rankings. Yami decided to keep his teammates in the dark until it was really necessary. Seeing that everyone was already here, Anko decided to start the second exam. Listen everyone, behind me is the Forest of Death. Each squad will be given one scroll. This scroll could be the Heaven Scroll or the Earth Scroll. After you enter the forest, you must find a group that has the scroll you don't have. Once you have one Earth Scroll and one Heaven Scroll, you can cross the entire forest and reach the tower on the other end. The time limit is 3 days, and for a squad to pass this test, all the members must reach the tower. You are allowed to use whichever method you like to snatch the other team's scroll. Anko explained to them about the exam, and after clearing a few doubts from the other participants, she led them toward a tent whose back door opens in the Forest of Death. Go in the tent one squad at a time. You will randomly receive the scroll inside, and you can hide it with any of your teammates and then enter the forest. When you are inside the tent, no one will know which no you have been given. Remember not to open those scrolls before you reach the tower, or else you will be directly disqualified. Yami and his squad entered the tent and saw a Konoha Chunin with a box full of Earth and Heaven scrolls. The scrolls weren't separated but mixed in randomly. Without looking at the box, the Chunin picked up a scroll and handed it to Lee, who was the nearest. I will keep it safe. Give it to me. Niji stretched his hand toward Lee. Lee looked at Yami for confirmation, and after receiving a nod in return, he handed the scroll over to Niji. We have gotten the Heaven Scroll. Now we need to search someone with an Earth Scroll, Lee said while the squad entered the Forest of Death. Do you have any plans, Yami? Niji asked. I don't think this test is going to be any challenge for us. I am planning to roam around the forest today while I leave a clone of mine with you guys. That's not fair, Yami. You want to hog away all the fun, Lee said in a slightly complaining tone. I say we don't waste any time and complete this test to break the previous record, Niji said. That won't do anything other than make us a target in the later stages, and even other villages might keep an eye on us. Yami shook his head. Due to him not doing missions outside the Land of Waves, not much about Yami was known to the other villages. Hiruzen was also making sure that nothing about Yami's kills or any other feats fall into the hands of other villages, especially the Land of Lightning, who had suffered a great loss at the hands of Yami and then at the hands of Danzo. Even in the Land of Waves, the credit for all the action was given to all the Genins except Yami and Sakura, as both of them did nothing. Only Yami took care of the cloaked mercenaries in the end, but that part was kept out of the official report. As Yami was thinking, he suddenly remembered something. Let's mess up more with the flow of events, he thought. Lee, do you want to go see Sakura? Yami asked. Hearing Sakura's name, Lee had a bright smile on his face. Yami, do you really have something that can help me win her heart? Lee asked. I am nothing of the sort. I am just going to give you a reason that can help you travel with her for a little while during this test and maybe can change her opinion of you, Yami clarified. He didn't want to make such promises to Lee, and he knew that the chances of Sakura moving on from Sasuke is too low. Never felt such emotions for anyone else, so for him this was something truly new and exciting. When you find my brother's squad, tell Naruto that one of the participants in this exam is an Uzumaki. Her name is Karen Uzumaki, and she is treated badly by her teammates. Yami said what was on his mind. How will that help me garner favor with Sakura? I have no problem with going by myself and rescuing a girl from 2 Genins, Lee asked in a confused tone. Yami facepalmed himself as he said Naruto thinks that he is the last Uzumaki alive. So knowing that Uzumaki is alive and in the same forest, he will definitely want to find her, and by saving a bully girl, Sakura would think about you in a new light. Lee didn't question Yami's motives and quickly agreed to this. While all this talks were happening, Niji was standing to the side listening to all this. Yami isn't the type of guy to waste his time and energy in all this. What is his motive behind having the Uzumaki girl rescued? Niji thought. He knew that nothing is simple and straightforward when it comes to Yami. Yami sensed Niji's thought process as he looked him and said, "Niji, do you have anything better to do?" Chapter 117, Empty-Headed Lee. What do you mean by that, Yami? Niji questioned. He didn't understand in what context Yami was asking him this. I meant if you want to go with Lee to find and help the girl or you have something else to do in the forest? Yami asked. He definitely meant something else. Niji thought as he narrowed his eyes while looking at Yami. Yami simply smiled at that. He actually meant to ask if Niji has anything better to do other than question everything Yami says. Over the past few months and the recent Land of Waves mission had let Niji understand a little about how Yami thinks. He knows Yami always has an ulterior motive and wouldn't do something just out of the goodness of his heart. Seeing that Yami wasn't saying anything, Niji said, I will go with Lee. Not because I care about some random girl, but because he is my teammate and the test requires all the team members to reach the tower. Niji didn't want to acknowledge that somewhere he also wanted to save a damsel in distress. Hearing this made Lee very happy and he patted Niji's back. I knew I could always count on you, Niji. Niji made an annoyed expression at that but didn't say anything. Yami clapped his hands and said, Great, I don't know much about her except that she has red hair, wears specs, and is bullied by her teammates. I came across her info by accident. Yami then bid his goodbyes and left his squad. He started speeding in a completely different direction. He wanted to create an ample distance between himself and his team. He didn't want Orochimaru to catch up to him when he is with his teammates. In a hurry, I forgot to leave a clone of mine with them. Chuck it, I have the bats that will help me locate them. For now, I need to find a safe place so that I can focus and sense where that snake is. I am 90% sure that he is after me, but I don't want to take risks. Niji has already seen him. If they cross paths, then Niji's curiosity might get the better of him. Yami thought as he was rushing in a direction the teams were scarce due to high forest density. On the other side of the forest, Niji had already located Team 7 in the forest with his Byakugan. Naruto's chakra was different than normal people and Niji already knew this during his Waves mission. Among the countless chakra signatures in the Forest of Death, finding Naruto didn't prove to be much of a challenge for Niji. How far are they? Lee asked while hopping from one tree to another with Niji. We have almost reached. They seem to be fighting some Genin squad. Niji said. He could see 6 chakra signatures entangling with each other, which gave him the impression that they were fighting with someone. After a few seconds, Lee and Niji heard the sound of a tree falling. They quickly rushed to see what happened and saw 2 missed Genins were trapped under a tree while a third one was unconscious on the ground. They already took down a squad. Though the opponents are weaklings, this is a good pace seeing that the test has just started. Niji thought as he looked at Naruto and Sasuke, who were standing in a fighting stance staring at the fallen tree. Niji then saw Sakura, who was standing in the back doing nothing. Does she provide the squad with anything? I have never seen her be any use to the squad, he thought. Heyy Sakura. Lee shouted and jumped, nearing the paired-haired girl, giving her a small heart attack. Ah! Sakura screamed as she saw someone appear beside her in an instant and fell back. Naruto and Sasuke were also alarmed by seeing this and quickly turned back. Sasuke was even about to activate his Sharingan and had one hand on the hilt of his sword. Huh? Naruto blurted out as he saw Lee. He and Sasuke relaxed after seeing that it was no enemy. Lee felt embarrassed scaring Sakura like this, so he apologized and stretched his hand toward Sakura. I am sorry for scaring you like that, Sakura. Hee, how are you? Sakura was in a daze after seeing this, but she still replied, it's okay, why? I am good, nothing to worry about, she said as she took his hand and stood back up. Dusting off her flat ass, she looked at Lee and asked, what are you doing here? Sakura's impression of Lee wasn't as bad as in the canon. In the canon, he was just someone who suddenly appeared and started to woo her as well as challenge and defeat her prince Shining Sasuke. But this time he was someone who was a strong backup in the land of waves. Lee was also Yami's teammate, which made him trustworthy in the eyes of Sakura. Seeing that the little misunderstanding was cleared, Neji also jumped down the tree. Seeing Neji, Sasuke looked around in search of his brother, but he couldn't find Yami. "Why are you guys here, and where's Yami?" Naruto asked before Sasuke could. "What do you think?" Neji said while spreading his hands. Sasuke knew Lee and Neji weren't the type of guys to abandon their teammates, but Yami was the type to go off alone. He must have gone alone, Sasuke said while he shook his head. He didn't like this habit of Yami, as it was Yami who had made him realize how important it is to work as a team. Yami going off solo truly made Sasuke worry. "We are here because Yami told us to help you, Naruto," Lee said. Naruto was a bit confused as he heard this. As always, Lee had said things without thinking much. Is Yami looking down on me or Team 7? Naruto thought. Why would we need any help? We are strong enough to defeat anyone in this forest, Naruto said with a proud expression as he glanced at the fallen Miss Genins. Chapter 118, Free Scroll. When everyone heard what Naruto just said, they could agree that Team 7 was stronger than many Genins in the forest, but there were some monsters in front of whom Naruto wouldn't stand a chance. Monsters like Yami and Gaara. Looks like you forgot that chop you got from Yami in the Land of Waves, Sakura said, making Naruto's face turn red in embarrassment. He could never forget how humiliating it was for him to get knocked out instantly. And this happened when he was fully vigilant, which means he couldn't even complain that Yami caught him off guard. Yami performed a sneak attack. Why would you remind me of that, Sakura? Naruto looked at Sakura with puppy eyes. Sakura didn't spare him a glance and humped as she looked away. Lee, speak in proper context or you might end up creating more misunderstandings. Neji spoke as he shook his head. He regretted not starting to explain the matter himself. Leaving it to Lee turned out to be a big mistake. Lee understood his mistake as he approached Naruto to apologize to him. I am sorry, Naruto, what I meant to say is Yami-sen is here. He told us that a girl named Karen Uzumaki is among the participants in this forest. She is also being bullied by her teammates, Lee clarified. What? Another Uzumaki in this forest? Naruto asked in a surprised tone. He did ask Gigi, Hiruzen, but he said that Naruto was the last Uzumaki survivor. I thought the Uzumaki clan has gone extinct, Sakura said, who was bookworm in the academy. How does Yami know about this? Sasuke asked. His question wasn't directed at Lee but at Neji. Neji shrugged as he said, I don't know, but he said that he came by this information just by coincidence. Then why didn't he tell Sasuke about it while they were coming to the academy this morning? Sakura asked. She couldn't understand why Yami waited for the test to start. He could have easily told them this before the test had begun. I don't want to waste my time thinking about all that. Let's go and look for this girl, Naruto said, looking at his teammates. He was eager to meet someone from his clan and wanted to know everything about the clan from her. Idiot, do you even know how she looks or what her name is? Sakura asked frowningly as she looked at Naruto. Damn, Sakura is scary when she gets angry, Lee thought, looking at the short-tempered girl. Her hair must be red, that's for sure. I remember reading that all Uzumakis have red hair, Sasuke said. Hearing this, Naruto unconsciously touched and looked at his hair. Seeing this, Lee hesitated for a second and asked Naruto, why are your hair red? I don't know. I will have to ask Gigi about this. For now, let's stop wasting time and go meet this girl. He was slowly losing his patience, and as his teammates, Sasuke and Sakura, were well aware of that. Fine, let's go, we have more than enough time to complete this test, Sasuke said. Don't you want the scroll these guys have? Lee asked, pointing toward the three Miss Genins. Oh yes, I will check them quickly, Naruto said as he rushed to take their scroll. After searching the one on the ground, he found the scroll. Naruto then saw that the two who were trapped under the tree had successfully freed themselves, but they were so tired that they fell unconscious not far from there. Naruto looked at Sasuke and said, "This is an earth scroll. It is no use to us. We need a heaven scroll," with the earth scroll in his hand. Sasuke looked at Neji but didn't say anything. Neji understood what he meant and turned toward Naruto. "We'll take it." "Oh, so you guys have a heaven scroll," Naruto said with a smirk on his face. "Do you want to fight for it?" Lee asked without thinking. His hands were itching for a fight. He is also a battle maniac like others, maybe even more. Sakura thought, seeing Lee's antics. "Did you already forget what we came here for? We are only taking the scroll because getting one ourselves won't be much of a challenge but plain bullying. Us getting an earth scroll was only a matter of time," Neji said. He was someone who didn't like taking favors from others, but he knew that this test wasn't anything where he needed to prove himself or even put much of an effort. Everyone who knew him and his squad were sure that all three of them will become Chunins. Naruto tossed the scroll toward Neji, who stored it with the heaven scroll. Naruto refused to believe that he will be defeated by Neji or Lee, but his current priority was to find the girl from his clan. "How are we going to find her?" Sasuke asked. "Yami didn't mention that." Lee shook his head and looked at Neji to see if his teammate has any idea to find the girl. Uzumaki clan members have a larger chakra pool compared to others. I can sense 2 more people with a large chakra pool compared to normal Genins. One is too far and seems to be alone, while the other one is a few kilometers away from us and is with 2 more Genins. Let's go and find the one who's closer to us. It has 2 Genins with it, which could mean it's the girl," Sakura said, and Lee and Sasuke nodded. Lee looked at the chakra pool, which appeared far from him. He could see that it was the same direction Yami went in. Sasuke was also lost and thought, "Why didn't Yami tell me this before? Did he have another motive of sending his team here with us?" Suddenly both Neji and Sasuke looked at each other and thought the same thing. Yami is going to do something by himself again. Chapter 119, Snake on My Tail. While Team 7 and the rest of Yami's squad were moving toward Karen, Yami was going into the deeper part of the jungle. On the way, he did come across some teams, but they were too weak to even sense him, so Yami just ignored them and moved forward. He wasn't using his full speed, as he had to stop and sense his surroundings from time to time. For the last 2 times, he sensed that a powerful chakra signature was moving toward him swiftly. Whoever this person was also ignoring the squads that were in the way. This must be Orochimaru. He doesn't want to garner attention before getting to me. He knows the moment he releases his strength, Anko will notice it and bolt in his direction. I still don't know how Orochimaru knows where I am. Looks like my strength is nowhere good enough to tackle a legendary Sannin, Yami thought as he was running. After a few seconds, he sensed that there were no teams present for a few kilometers around him. I will just pretend to stop here to eat. Orochimaru isn't idiotic enough to attack me blindly. He will most probably think I am luring him away from the teams and I have prepared an ambush. Or he will underestimate me and attack openly. I can't make up my mind unless I know whether he received my mission reports from Danzo or not. If he did, then he will be cautious, and if he didn't, means that he didn't want to risk telling Danzo that he is interested in me. Yami thought as he was a little confused. Yami was the kind of guy who didn't like not knowing things. All these years, almost all the things that he had predicted happened. He never had to worry about losing against someone in terms of strength, but Orochimaru was on a whole new level. Yami was sure that he was being tracked, but he didn't have any idea how. As he was thinking all this, he sensed Orochimaru land on a tall tree a few meters from here. Yami had to try his best to remain calm in such a situation. Acting rashly could alert Orochimaru. My biggest advantage is Orochimaru will underestimate me and he doesn't want to kill me but wants my body, Yami thought when he suddenly sensed 2 kunai coming his way. Yami acted surprised and jumped back. He looked at the direction in which the kunai came. What are you doing here alone? You seem lost. Yami Uchiha, SSS, Orochimaru said. He was still in the Jin and girl's form. Yami had no hurry to expose Orochimaru's identity, so he decided to act as well. You are the girl who was spewing intent at me and my teammates earlier. Do we know each other? Yami asked. Waving his long tongue in the air, Orochimaru replied, You don't know me, but I know you very well. You have something that I want. Yami could sense Orochimaru's intent and desperation in his last sentence. Fucking Petamaru wants my Sharingan, eh? Yami thought. He was about to ask more, but he saw Orochimaru jump towards him. Yami made a few hand seals and spewed a fireball jutsu at the snake. Fire style, fireball jutsu. He knew that the fireball wouldn't do anything to a person like Orochimaru, but it will surely block his vision. Seeing the fireball, Orochimaru was impressed, but he decided to go through it instead of dodging it. As he reached the center of the fireball, he suddenly realized something. Why is this fireball so hot? It is actually making my skin feel a slight burning sensation. As I thought, this kid isn't simple. Orochimaru muttered as he landed on the ground where Yami stood. He looked in the direction he sensed Yami, but he saw a sword come toward him at a fast pace. Orochimaru wanted to test the strength in Yami's sword attack, but he didn't want to take the same risk he took during the fireball. He simply jumped up and stood on a branch. Yami looked up toward Orochimaru and saw that the girl's skin had burned in many places and the pale Orochimaru's skin was visible. He decided to play the role of an innocent genin. What happened to your skin? And how did you not suffer any damage by my fireball? Yami asked in a fake angry tone. He wanted Orochimaru to believe that Yami was still considering him a genin, and seeing him bested, Yami had lost his composure. Seeing this, Orochimaru couldn't help but be happier. Just like I thought, he has the arrogance of an Uchiha in him. It will be way easier this way to make him a puppet that dances on my tunes, and when the time comes I can transfer myself into his body. Yami, you haven't seen anything yet. Orochimaru provoked as he slammed his hands on the branch. Seeing this, Yami didn't understand what kind of a jutsu Orochimaru was trying to do, but then he sensed movement under him. This movement doesn't feel like an earth-style jutsu, it's more fluid. Yami thought as he jumped back. As he managed to gain some distance, he saw a huge green-colored snake jump out of the ground. I didn't know you were a censor. Orochimaru raised his eyebrows. Every move performed by Yami was making him happier every passing second. For a while, he was confused about which Uchiha to target, as he had gotten the information that Sasuke was greedy for power to take revenge for his clan's extinction and Yami was the quiet one. But now he felt that he had made the right decision. Is this your summoning animal? Yami asked Orochimaru with full knowledge that the snake wasn't, but he had a part to play. Orochimaru just shrugged while the snake rushed at Yami, showing his fangs. Yami covered his blade with lightning chakra and rushed at the brown snake. Chapter 120, The Manda Wannabe. Seeing a 9-year-old rush at it with a sword, the brown snake became more ferocious. It had many humans, and genins would simply start running away or just freeze in place seeing him. Though he wasn't anywhere near as strong as summons from the Ryuchi cave, he was still a big and deadly snake. The snake didn't just want to swallow Yami whole as he did with other weaklings, but he wanted to tear the kid in half and hear his screams. As Yami reached closer to the big snake, sparks of lightning could be seen dancing throughout the blade. Yami didn't want to expose his purple lightning to Orochimaru. As at the last second, the snake turned his mouth sideways as he expected Yami to target his eyes, which is what many people do when dealing with snakes. He wanted to see the shocked look on Yami's face, but that didn't happen. Yami jumped to the side and pierced his sword in the snake's underbelly. The brown snake did have scales on the underbelly, but they weren't as strong as the rest of his body. Lightning discharged through the sword, making all the insides of the snake spasm. Yami didn't have any plan to give the snake another chance to attack. Yami suddenly stopped the lightning discharge and covered his sword in wind chakra. This wasn't the time to shock or stab, but to cut. He tightly gripped his sword and ran toward the tail of the snake while his sword's blade was still in the snake's belly. Blood started spurting out from the belly where Yami's sword was cutting the snake open. Orochimaru, who was still standing on the top of a tree branch, was seeing all this with complete amusement. He didn't care one bit whether the brown snake lives or dies. His happiness had already reached its peak seeing his future body perform so well. While all this was happening, no one had any idea that a fight like this was taking place in the Forest of Death. Yami hadn't forced Orochimaru to use much of his strength, so like in the canon, Anko hadn't sensed Orochimaru's presence. Seeing the brown snake on the doorsteps of death, Yami looked at Orochimaru. It was time to end the facade. "Who are you and what do you want?" Yami asked. "Who am I? For now, it doesn't matter, SSS, and for what I want is, to give you power," Orochimaru said, trying to gauge Yami's reaction to his last sentence. Yami didn't say anything but kept staring at Orochimaru. Seeing this, Orochimaru clicked his tongue and said, "I didn't want to do it, but let's do it the hard way." Orochimaru started jumping on branches around Yami. He was moving at a speed that Yami had never seen before. Only those Kumo Jonins were able to move at this speed after using lightning chakra. Orochimaru is truly at a whole different level, Yami thought as he activated his Sharingan. He was now able to see the pale-faced snake at a speed where he could react and even fight with him. Yami still kept looking around a little frantically to make Orochimaru think that he was too fast for Yami to comprehend. Yami made some hand seals and slowly the surrounding felt like it was melting and changing into something else. Orochimaru also lowered his speed seeing the surrounding melt. "Oh, this brat is trying to cast a Genjutsu," he thought. The surrounding of a jungle changed to that of a volcano. "Oh, so you were able to successfully put me in a Genjutsu, kid. I must say that was unexpected." Orochimaru amused. For a second he remembered the time when Itachi had put him in a Genjutsu, making him feel as if large iron nails were stabbed into his body. This kid might surpass Itachi in terms of Genjutsu as well as other things, Orochimaru thought as he tried to break the Genjutsu. He could see Yami standing a few meters ahead of him, but there was a stream of lava flowing in the middle. As Orochimaru walked a few steps toward the stream, he started feeling the heat. He then saw Yami slam his palms on the ground, making the calm stream of lava come to life. A snake completely made of lava, the same as Orochimaru, rose from the stream. "You think something like this is enough to scare me, kid? We both know this isn't real. The only reason the Genjutsu is still intact is because I haven't focused much on breaking it." What Orochimaru just said was the truth, and even Yami knew that. Even Yami was thankful that Orochimaru didn't put his mind to breaking the Genjutsu. Seeing the lava snake stand still, a smile grew on Orochimaru's face. He thought Yami had lost the will to fight, as Orochimaru had declared it to be only a trick to fool others rather than actual lava. But this is where Orochimaru was wrong, as the next second the snake pounced toward Orochimaru's shoulder. The snake bit Orochimaru's shoulder and then exploded. "Ah!" Orochimaru winced in pain as the snake exploded. "How?" he exclaimed with a loud voice, looking at his shoulder and then at Yami, who had a smirk on his face. The Genjutsu then broke like shattered glass and the scenery changed back to the jungle. Orochimaru looked at his left shoulder and saw that some part of it was blown off. The clothes on his left side were burnt as well as soaked in blood. He just couldn't comprehend how Yami was able to give him actual physical damage. Why didn't my instincts go off when his physical attack was approaching? Orochimaru thought. The smirk on Yami's face had become wider seeing the bewildered Orochimaru. He wasn't entirely sure of this plan, but knew that if this worked, he could instill a small amount of fear in Orochimaru's heart. Enough fear that Orochimaru will be a little cautious around him. "Tell me, kid, how you did it and I will give you a gift," Orochimaru said, but desire burning in his eyes. Chapter 121, Orochimaru's Bite. I can't tell him that using Yuhi clan's technique I turned off his instincts and then threw a chakra-covered kunai with an explosive talisman attached to it. As long as my ability to manipulate my opponent's instincts stays hidden from people, I can have them take physical damage and make them think that it's only an illusion. The Genjutsu broke in this case because Orochimaru instantly realized that he physically took damage as well. Yami thought. He wasn't sure if he would be able to effectively manipulate Orochimaru's instincts, but luckily even one of the legendary Sannin was affected by that technique. Seeing that no reply came from Yami, Orochimaru's curiosity continued to grow. He knew he didn't have long before someone finds out about him. Outside the Forest of Death, Anko was sitting on a wooden platform having some dangdo. Beside her stood one of the shinobis who brought the kids from the academy to the Forest of Death. As Anko was eating, a figure body flickered at some distance from her. Seeing the figure, Anko looked up and asked, "I told you not to bother me unless there is something really important." The figure was just one of the Konoha guards, but he seemed a bit more skilled as compared to other gate guards like Kotetsu and Azuma. "Miss Anko, it is really important. One of the participants was found dead." Listening to that, Anko raised her eyebrows in annoyance and said it's common for participants to die during the Chunin exams. "Was the one who died a genin of our village?" The guard shook his head and said no, the one who died was from the hidden mist. Anko's annoyance increased twofold after hearing this, as she said, "Then why are you getting so worked up?" The guard hesitated for a few seconds and said, "Because the one who died has been dead for 8 to 10 hours, but that same person participated in the Chunin exams a few hours ago. And the way this person is killed is really strange, but something we have seen before." The guard pulled out some papers which could be the dead boy's report. Anko quickly understood what the guard was trying to say as she stood up and took the papers from the guard's hands. She glanced at them for a few seconds as her eyes widened and her hands started shivering a little. "It's definitely him," she muttered. The expression of fear vanished from her face instantly and a look of determination and anger appeared on it. She quickly turned toward the direction of the Forest of Death and said, "What is he doing in the forest?" "This is just Chunin exams." Looking back at the guard, she ordered, "Quickly prepare a team. We need to go inside the forest and make sure not many people other than Hokage-sama and a few jonins know about this. The last thing we need is a wave of panic spread out across the village when we have foreign shinobis here." Anko then turned toward her subordinate and said, "Get me a detailed list of the participants that entered the forest. If we can narrow down who Orochimaru will target, we can prevent a disaster from befalling our village." Anko was worried that Orochimaru may have come to kidnap or kill someone important from another village. If something like that happens, then it could become the spark that lights the fire of war between two countries. Seeing the serious mood, the subordinate hurriedly left as well. "I will catch you today, Orochimaru, and make you pay for your crimes," Anko muttered while gritting her teeth. The sorrow of being betrayed by your own teacher is not something a shinobi can forget. Anko also knew the numerous unspeakable crimes Orochimaru had committed while she was naive enough to think that her teacher was kind at heart. Anko subconsciously touched the cursed seal mark left by Orochimaru on her shoulder near the neck. In the depths of the Forest of Death, Yami could be seen with a bloody sword in his hand standing in front of Orochimaru, whose fake skin mask was half burnt. Orochimaru still thought that Yami hadn't recognized him. As they were staring at each other, Orochimaru suddenly looked in a different direction. Yami knew that this direction is where the entrance of the Forest of Death is, and that means a search party has been dispatched to look for Orochimaru. "I hate to cut our meet short," Orochimaru said with a sly smile on his face as his neck extended from his shoulders like a snake. Yami was truly surprised to see this. He knew that this is how Orochimaru bit Sasuke in the canon, but now seeing it in person was really creepy to a whole new level. He was thankful that he hadn't seen Orochimaru come out of his own mouth as if shedding his old skin. This whole time Yami had his Sharingan active so he could see the head coming toward him, but he still didn't react. Orochimaru bit Yami on the shoulder near his neck, and after a second he retracted his reed. Yami wanted to react by slashing his sword instantly as Orochimaru bites, but the pain that came as he bit was tremendous. Yami hadn't experienced such internal pain before. His arm felt so numb that he dropped the sword to the ground. He immediately went on one knee as he held the bitten area with his other hand and winced in pain. "You even outperformed in this matter, Yami. All those who have received this gift from me have been in enough pain to wail loudly and roll on the ground in pain, but you seem to be holding surprisingly well." He then again looked in that direction and said, "Looks like I will have to take my leave. Experience the power my gift will give you, and if you want more then come and find me, Yami Uchiha," Orochimaru said as he ran away deeper into the forest. Chapter 122, Orochimaru's Cursed Seal. He saw Orochimaru leave. The energy that the cursed seal released the moment it was imprinted on Yami notified Anko where Orochimaru was. She along with a search party quickly rushed toward the depths of the forest. While all this was happening, Yami felt that something was happening inside the body. Black strands started to reach out toward Yami's chakra network. The cursed seal connects to the host's chakra network. This connection then gives a small boost to the host when she needs it, but the side effect is that the host might lose some of his sanity. With time and proper training, this side effect can be minimized. The more strength the host tries to extract from the cursed seal, the more difficult it becomes to maintain a sane mind. I remember in the canon the first level of cursed seal power only appears as a spread out tattoo, but in the later stages, actual physical changes occur in the host's body. Yami thought. He wanted to see how his chakra core and his devouring law essence will react with the cursed seal. Yami used his enhanced senses and made sure that there wasn't anyone in his vicinity. He could sense that Anko and the search party had changed their direction, which meant that they had found a trail that could lead them to Orochimaru. Yami looked back and saw the huge brown snake laying in a pool of blood. Yami used devouring law to devour the entire snake and then burnt all the blood that was on the ground. Devouring the snake really restored all my lost energy and brought me back to the peak. Yami thought as he sat in a lotus position to see the changes happening in his body due to the curse mark. He didn't want the curse to flare while he is fighting. Yami always liked when things happened along the lines of what he predicted, and Yami didn't know about the cursed seal enough to be sure that it won't act up during his 1v1 fights as it happened with Sasuke in the canon. As Yami closed his eyes and looked inside his own body, he saw that the black strands originating from the curse mark were about to reach his chakra network. Yami wanted to see how his chakra network, which had a chakra core as a source, would react to this outside energy. Will it ignore these black strands like it did with the devouring law essence, or will it let the black strands attach to itself like a parasite and become the host? After a few seconds, the moment of truth appeared as a black strand reached a fairly large vein of Yami's chakra network. The next second something unexpected happened. The chakra core sent a powerful pulse toward that vein and a small burst of energy attacked the black strand. Yami could feel that his entire chakra network was attacking the black strand aggressively. Wow, I didn't think my chakra would act this way toward the cursed seal. Yami thought as he saw the black strand shrivel and retreat. The point where the black strand had touched the chakra network started glowing and hard skin appeared on the walls of the vein, making sure that nothing can touch the vein at that same spot and invade the chakra network. The hard skin started following the same path through which the black strand traveled. After a few minutes, the entire curse mark was isolated by chakra-infused hard skin. Yami was surprised as well as happy to see this. This would mean that the curse mark won't affect him in any way. Yami didn't know if he would be able to devour the curse mark with his devouring law, but Yami wanted to find a way to exploit the strength of the curse mark without having to bear the side effects like being a pawn of Orochimaru and losing his sanity every time he tries to use that power. The fact that the curse seal won't affect me is good for the time being. It's time to end this test. Yami thought as he stood up and tidied his clothes. He was sure that his teammates and his brother's squad must have saved the red-haired Uzumaki. An hour ago, Niji, Lee along with Team 7 were heading in the direction Niji had pointed them toward. After a minute they reached the bottom of a small mountain. Niji had chosen a path where they wouldn't have to face any other team. There was only one thing that was going through Niji and Sasuke's heads. Why did Yami send us away? They both had an uneasy feeling in their heart as if something was going wrong, but they couldn't put a finger on it. Where is she? Sakura asked, looking at Niji. Niji looked at her and then pointed toward a couple of bushes and said, I can sense her there. Her teammates seemed to be fighting with another squad at the moment, leading her there. Let's go see her then, Naruto said impatiently and jumped toward the bushes. The bushes were a little tall and dense, but Naruto still ran through them. He used his kunai to cut those who came in his way while Sasuke cut some with his sword. As Naruto was running, he suddenly sensed something and jumped sideways. He then saw a shuriken fly right past him. He pushed the bushes aside and saw a fragile girl sitting on the ground with a kunai in her hand. She had red eyes and hair and wore black spectacles. She was wearing a netted top and a khaki jacket on top. She looked injured in many places and both her arms had bite marks. Some bite marks even had blood dripping from them. Her hands were shivering and she couldn't even hold a kunai properly. "Are you Karen Uzumaki?" Naruto asked as he grit his teeth. Chapter 123, Karen Uzumaki. Hearing Naruto say her name, Karen flinched at first and then asked in a quivering voice, "Who are you?" "How do you know my name?" Before Naruto could reply to her questions, Neji along with the others came through the bush. Seeing more people, Karen stepped back. "Is this Karen Uzumaki?" "She has red hair just like Yami told us," Lee said, pointing toward Karen. Neji and Sasuke were looking at the numerous injuries and bite marks on Karen's arms. Even Sakura was shocked after seeing the state of the redhead girl. Naruto lifted his hands showing that he had no weapon and said, "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I am a Konoha Genin. I thought I was the last Uzumaki." Karen tilted her head and looked at Naruto's hair, which were yellow, and said, "How can you be a Uzumaki? You don't have red hair." No. He is telling the truth. He is an Uzumaki," Sakura said as she came forward. "Stay back," Karen said while pointing her kunai at Sakura. "Don't be scared. We are here to help you. How did you get so many injuries and bite marks? And why are you alone here?" Lee said. Everyone could tell that Karen wasn't just injured but also underfed. Just when Karen was about to answer, everyone heard footsteps coming from behind them. Sasuke and Neji had cleared the bushes in their way, so everyone had a good view as to who was coming from behind. As they turned back, they saw two grass Genins walking toward them. They were both a little injured but nowhere near as Karen. Seeing Neji and the others, both the Genins became alert. One took out a kunai from his pocket while the other one sheathed a short sword from his back. "Why did we have to face another team just after we fought against one?" the Genin with a kunai said to the other. "What do you guys want?" the one with the sickle said. Seeing them, Karen shouted, "Shigiri." Sasuke gripped his sword and said, "So you are her teammate?" She is no teammate of ours. Just a waste who we used to heal," the one with the kunai said. Shigiri looked at Karen and said with a little anger in his voice, "You bitch, you must have brought them to our hideout. You will be the first one to die after them." Sakura frowned as she heard this. How can someone have such hate for their own teammate? Looks like she really is bullied by them, as Lee told me. "Even if you kill her, we won't give the scrolls we have," Shigiri said. "You are ready to sacrifice her for just a scroll?" Neji asked. He did believe what Yami told him, but just a few days ago he had understood that he must gauge things himself rather than judging things by what you hear. Shigiri sneered as he heard this. Why would we care about such a trash? Her mother died as a disposable tool, and so will she. Tears started streaming out of Karen's eyes as she heard this. She remembered how weak her mother was when she died. How the grass shinobis used her to heal and threw her away when she was of no use. "What do they mean?" Lee asked as he looked at Karen. Karen hesitated a little and then said, "Me and mother can heal someone if that person bites us. Our chakra has normal healing properties. The shinobis of Hidden Grass used that property of my mother to such an extent, and she even used up her life force and died." Hearing this, Neji and the others felt immense anger rise in their heart. They couldn't even imagine what Karen and her mother must have gone through and what the future for Karen will be like if they didn't save her. The one who was the angriest was Naruto. As a fellow Uzumaki, he felt bad for Karen's condition. He felt that all these years he had lived in hell, being called a monster, a fox, and many more things, but now he understood that Karen had gone through something worse than that. How could do this to her? Naruto shouted, looking at Shigiri and the other Genin with burning anger in his eyes. "What wrong with that? This is the only way she can be useful." Shigiri snickered. Naruto wanted to rush and beat the two grass Genins, but Sasuke stopped him. "From now on, she will come with us, and even after the Chunin exam she will stay in the Hidden Leaf," Sasuke said. The grass Genin chuckled and said, "Do you think we will give you our tool just because this is your village?" Do you think the hidden leaf will offend the hidden grass just for this trash? Hearing the words tool and trash angered everyone, including Neji, who would usually be calm. Before Neji could say, Lee and Naruto rushed toward the grass Genins. These two! Sasuke cursed. He was angry by all this, but he knew better than to rush into things blindly. But now that Naruto and Lee had initiated a fight, he had no option other than supporting them in the fight. He was about rushing the fight as well, but Neji looked at him and said, stop. Those two have already started the fight. Now there is no way that we can avoid a conflict. Sasuke said with a questioning gaze. He couldn't understand why Neji would stop him from helping their teammates. Neji looked at Naruto and Lee, who were exchanging attacks with the grass Genins, and said both Naruto and Lee have suffered a lot from the people around him. Both have been called trash numerous times, so they understand what it feels like when someone is disgusted just by your existence. Let them fight. Let them bring out the pain they have suffered all these years so that they can end the suffering this girl has gone through. Chapter 124, Karen Last Hope. Sasuke knew exactly what Neji was talking about. The entire village had ostracized Naruto and called him a monster and whatnot, while Lee was discriminated against for not being able to use chakra at all. Even when Yami had told Sasuke about having a teammate who can't use chakra, the first thing Sasuke said was, why did such a guy even become a shinobi? He himself had discriminated against Lee without even knowing him. Not until Yami told him about Lee's specialization in taijutsu did Sasuke believe that Lee wouldn't be a burden. Seeing Lee fight with Shurjiri barehanded and beat up Shurjiri so easily, Sasuke understood that this resulted from Lee's stubbornness and hard work. Won't you help your teammates fight with mine? Karen asked in a meek tone. Hearing this, Sakura patted her non-existent chest and proudly said, we don't need to. They can easily handle themselves. Can't you see they are beating the hell out of your teammates? She is right. Her teammates are on a different level than mine. Are they really fighting for me? Karen thought as a slight blush appeared on her cheeks. After a minute or two, Naruto and Lee returned to the group with 2 scrolls in hand. Naruto tossed the scroll his team needed to Sasuke and threw the other one. Hee, this was easy. Lee smiled and looked at Naruto. We make a good team, Naruto, don't we? Lee asked, and Naruto nodded. Shurjiri and the other grass Genin were sitting on the ground, beaten up badly. They weren't unconscious, and just at the start of the fight they understood that these 2 Genins aren't something they can handle. They tried to split and run multiple times, but the weirdo in green spandex was very fast and would kick them back into the fight, where the yellow-haired loudmouth's clones would beat them up. Come and heal us, bitch. Shurjiri shouted at Karen while he and his teammate are injured all over. Karen flinched a little when she heard Shurjiri call her, but then Sakura stood in front of her and yelled, she is already weak herself and you still want her to heal you. How shameless can you be? From now onwards Karen will stay in the hidden leaf. She is an Uzumaki, Naruto declared. Sasuke looked at Naruto and then at Karen and asked, what do you want, Karen? Do you want to go with them to the hidden grass, or do you want to stay in the hidden leaf? Karen looked at the angry faces of her teammates and then at the Konoha Genins who she just met. They were all looking at her and waiting for her decision. Karen clenched her fists and said in a stern tone, I don't want to go back to the people that killed my mother. But are you guys sure that your village will accept me? Naruto came forward and said, haha, don't worry. I will talk to Gigi myself about this. There is no way that he will say no to me. Sakura shook her head and looked and said, Karen, Yuzushiobikure used to be an ally of the Hidden Leaf before they were destroyed, so don't worry. Karen was more optimistic than before after listening to what Sakura just said. She was also happy that she found another Uzumaki here. She looked at everyone and asked, how did you guys know about me? Neji cleared his throat and said ahem, it was actually my teammate Yami who told us about you. He said that your surname being Uzumaki is what got his attention in the first place, and that he found out you were being bullied by your own teammates. Bullying would be too small of a word for what they did to her and her mom. Naruto said as he grit his teeth and sent a glare toward Shurjiri and the other grass Genin. Shurjiri was getting angrier and angrier as he kept hearing all this. He wanted to kill Karen in front of them all, but he knew that he wouldn't stand a chance. With hatred in his eyes and his words he said, "Do you guys think this is so simple? That she will be accepted like that?" Lee was confused when he heard that and asked, "What do you mean, Shurjiri?" Shurjiri chuckled while blood was trickling from his mouth and said, "She will be killed if I spread the news that she is a spy working for the Hidden Grass, and even if that doesn't happen, I can go back and tell the village of your traitorous decisions and you will be hunted by the Hidden Grass for the rest of your life." What he is saying does make sense. Neji and Sasuke thought at the same time and looked at each other. Naruto was confused even after hearing all this and asked Sasuke, "Is this true? Can he really do that to her?" Sasuke nodded and said, "Yes, he is right about it. The villages won't take a chance if they think that someone could be a spy, and for the second thing of her being hunted by the Hidden Grass is also a serious thing. They can claim that Karen knows a lot of secrets of the Hidden Grass and they want to kill her so that these secrets don't land in the hands of our village. If any of this happens, then Karen's life here could be worse than hell." Karen started to fall in a state of despair as she heard this. She was about to cry, but she felt a hand on her shoulder. She opened her eyes and saw Sakura, who had a smile on her face. "Don't worry, Karen. We will find a solution for this as well." A/N, by we she means everyone except her. Karen looked at Sakura and then at Sasuke and Neji. "Is there actually a solution to all this?" Sasuke and Neji looked at each other to guess whether the other had any solution to this problem, and when they were about to shake their head, they heard a voice coming from behind Shurjiri and the grass genin. "Of course there is." Chapter 125, Konoha Softies. Everyone suddenly turned toward the direction from where the sound came from. Even Shurjiri and the grass genin turned their heads in that direction. The last thing they needed was another team to butt into this whole mess. "Why am I?" Sasuke shouted as he saw his younger brother, whose clothes were almost soaked in blood. "I should have changed my clothes. The snake's blood is all over." Yami thought as he glanced at his own attire. "Who is he?" Karen asked Sakura. "That's Yami. Sasuke's younger brother and the one who told us about you," Sakura said while looking at Yami. Even she was worried as to whose blood was on Yami's clothes. Seeing the worried faces of his brother and his teammates, Yami waved his hand and said, "None of it is my blood. Just killed an animal." Sasuke was relieved when he heard that. He couldn't imagine who could bring his prodigal brother to such a state, but now that Yami had cleared off the misunderstanding, he felt good. Neji, who was quiet the whole time, glanced at Shurjiri and then at Yami and asked, "Yami, what did you mean when you said there is a solution to all this?" Neji had been thinking of a safe way to keep Karen in the Hidden Leaf without causing any problems between the two villages, but he couldn't think of even one practical solution. Yami smirked and said, "It's simple actually. We will make the Hidden Grass believe that she died in the Forest of Death. That way she can stay in the village for a few years, and even if the Hidden Grass finds out about her being alive in 2 to 3 years, they won't mull over the past for just a genin who they don't even value much." Hearing that the Hidden Grass doesn't value her made Karen a bit sad, but she knew this was the truth, and luckily this is what will help her escape from the claws of those grass shinobis. Everyone liked this idea, but they knew that this idea would be impossible without the assistance of their Jonin sensei as well as the Hokage. Naruto was confident in convincing the old man to let Karen stay in the village, and Neji knew that Guy would no doubt welcome the redhead. The only one who needed convincing would be Kakashi. Listening to the plan Yami just narrated, Shurjiri looked at Yami with an angry expression and said, "Do you think it is that easy to fool our Jonin sensei? And why do you think we will keep our mouths shut?" Karen wanted to request Shurjiri and the other genin to keep her being alive a secret, but then she saw Yami shake his head and said, "Don't you know the saying? Dead men tell no tales," he said and winked. Wah zzzzzzzzz. Everyone just heard a short buzzing sound and some purple sparks for even less than a second, and the next moment, Shurjiri and the grass genin's heads fell down from their heads. The two genins died without even knowing what and how they were killed. Even the Konoha genins along with Karen couldn't figure out whether Yami used a spell or his sword. They didn't even see Yami touch his sword or even perform any hand signs. Did he just? Karen asked with a fearful expression on her face. When did Yami's speed increase to such an extent? Sasuke wondered. Even he couldn't see what had happened. He doubted he would be able to counter it even if his Sharingan was active. Did you really have to kill them? Naruto asked. He never thought he would see any killing happen during the Chunin exams. Sakura would have fainted if she was the canon one, but this one had seen a lot of bloodshed on the bridge in the Land of Waves. Seeing 2 more headless bodies wasn't much big of a deal for her now. Karen wanted to cry, but she could only feel a knot untie in her chest. It was as if her suffering was slowly coming to an end. She looked at the bloody head of Shurjeri lying in the pool of blood. She remembered all the times Shurjeri cursed her and treated her as a healing tool. She couldn't think of a better punishment for the guy. Yami jumped from where he was standing and lightly landed in front of the Konoha Genins. He had gained a good amount of control over wind. At first, it was only to increase his air time, but in the Land of Waves, he even created invisible blades made of condensed wind to chop the mercenaries, and now he could create an air pocket under his feet to cushion his landing. He wanted to reach a level of mastery that even his enhanced hearing doesn't pick up on his movements. Was it truly necessary? Neji asked with a cold expression on his face. He had killed a couple of people on his missions, but never kids. This is the first time he even saw a kid die, and the one doing the killing was none other than his own teammate Yami. It would make a better convincing story if all 3 of the grass Genins die. And in this way, the grass shinobis will never find out that Karen is alive. Did you think that those 2 would have kept their mouths shut after listening to our plan? Yami said while pointing toward the headless corpses. Neji shook his head and said, what you said does make sense. But why did you tell the plan in front of them? Sasuke interrupted before Yami could answer. You intended to kill them from the very start. Yami felt a little annoyed at the behavior of his teammate and his brother. He glanced at both of them and said, why are you 2 getting so worked up over 2 Genins? How did I forget that in the anime these Konoha shinobis were softies? I changed many things, but this is not something I could change. Hope they don't drag on the death of these 2 trashes and annoy me more. Yami thought as he knew he had a headache coming. Chapter 126, Smuggling Karen Out. Yami was someone who had seen a couple of scenes from the warring times in Naruto. He knew that the world was way crueler back then. The current times could be called peaceful times by that comparison. But this brother and his teammates were still new to all this. And their kind-heartedness is what could become the reason for their downfall. Yami, did you kill any Genins since you came to the Forest of Death? Sakura asked in a little scared tone. Everyone turned toward Yami to see what his answer would be. They had known before that some deaths occurred during the Chunin exams, but are scarce. Yami shook his head and said no. I made sure to make my way through other groups' blind spots. I knew Neji and Lee would be able to get the scroll we need one way or the other, so I didn't need to do anything. Engaging in useless conflict with other groups is a waste of time. Sakura sighed as she heard that. She was thankful that Yami didn't kill anyone else during this test. What is that on your neck? Neji asked with a frown on his face. He had seen the tattoo on Yami's left hand, but this one on his neck was something new. This caught Sasuke's attention as well. He walked forward to inspect the tattoo. Yami, what is this? I don't remember seeing this one on you before. Sasuke asked. Yami adjusted his kimono and covered up the tattoo. He looked at Sasuke and said, we can talk about it later. Right now we need to end this test. Sakura, who was now tending Karen's wounds, looked at her teammates and asked, how are we going to get her out of here while making others believe that she is dead? Her using a transformation jutsu is the best option we have. Neji said. He looked at Yami for confirmation, who just nodded. Yami can disperse as bats and appear anywhere, including outside the Forest of Death. So we can have her transform into Yami and leave the forest with us. Sakura looked back at Karen and asked, are you going to be able to do it? Karen looked at Yami with fearful eyes and then at Sakura and said, I can try. I don't know if I can mimic a person's demeanor or not. Naruto quickly interjected, you don't have to worry about that, Karen. Hee, all you have to do is look serious and not talk to anyone. Yami's mouth twitched a little as he heard that. He looked at his teammates and brother, and all 3 of them were trying to hold in their laughter. I don't talk much because you people are childish, Yami thought as he controlled his own emotions. Ahem, now that we have finished with the planning, it is time to start the plan. All of you leave now. I will erase all traces of Shirogiri and his partner and then leave the forest. Where are we going to hide Karen? I can take her home. We both are Uzumaki. Naruto shouted without thinking anything. Karen's face turned red in embarrassment as she heard this. Sakura bonked his head hard for saying just stupid things. You idiot, how can you say something so shameless? Sakura shouted at Naruto. Ow, ow, fine, I am sorry. But where will she stay then? Naruto asked while rubbing his head. Neji decided to provide the solution himself rather than waiting for the rest of the Genins to figure out something. Since she is going to transform into Yami, why not let her stay in the Uchiha compound? There is plenty of room there. Everyone thought for a few seconds and then agreed, including Sakura and Karen. Although Sakura was a bit jealous when she heard this at first, but this was a question of life and death for the poor Karen, so Sakura decided to compromise a little. After everything was decided, Karen transformed into Yami. It took a few tries to get the perfect clone, but as an Uzumaki, she had a lot of chakra to spare. Now this looks just like you, Yami, Lee said as the entire group and Yami separated. After the entire group left, Yami burned the surroundings to ash. He wanted to erase any existence of Shirogiri and the other Miss Genin being here. You can come out now, Yami said while looking up in the sky. Hee hee, I must say you have pretty smart senses, Dosu of the Hidden Sound said as he stood on top of a branch. The rest of his team members also came out from the trees around him. This kid has a pretty good mission record, but I find it hard to believe that this kid is capable of something like that. He must have received outside help to complete those missions, Zaku said, looking at Yami with an envious gaze. Zaku, don't forget what we are sent here for, Kin said. She wanted to remind Zaku about their mission. Zaku made an annoyed face and said if he can't even handle a couple of blows from me, then he is not qualified. I just don't want to spend my time on trash. I will do it myself, Dosu said as he bolted toward Yami. He wanted to take care of Yami as fast as he could so that he can earn the acknowledgement of Orochimaru. He is my prey. Zaku scowled and rushed at Yami as well. He had a kunai in his hand which he aimed toward Yami's neck. Let's see if you will block or dodge this attack, Dosu and Zaku thought as they were about to reach Yami. The next second both of them were shocked as Yami didn't block nor dodge the attack. What the hell? Did we just hit his clone or something? Dosu thought. But then he saw blood coming out of Yami's mouth and wounds. As soon as the blood touched Zaku and Dosu's hands, they knew that this wasn't any trick. They had actually stabbed him. Just when Zaku was about to celebrate by taunting Yami more, something unexpected happened. Chapter 127, Zaku's Suffering. Zizaku, Dosu, why? A weak voice came from Yami's mouth which was already full of blood. Zaku and Dosu both felt a little odd when they heard this. The words were coming out of Yami's mouth, but they didn't sound like Yami at all. Isn't that Kin's voice? Dosu blurted out in confusion as he looked at Zaku. Why, yes, I feel it like that as well. Zaku nodded. The three of them had been together long enough to recognize each other's voice. They looked at Kin, who was standing. But the very next second her eyes turned red and a Sharingan could be seen in them. Zaku was shocked when he saw that. How is that possible? How can Kin have the Sharingan? What is happening? Zaku rained down questions on Dosu. Dosu calmed himself down and said Kin doesn't have Sharingan. He then proceeded to look at the bleeding Yami. Zaku also followed Dosu's gaze and looked at the bleeding Yami. Like ripples in water, Yami's body started to change, and within 2 seconds it was Kin standing in the middle bleeding while stabbed by her own teammates. Zaku felt a chill run down his spine as he saw the scene unfold in front of him. He couldn't believe what was reality and what wasn't. Dosu looked back at Kin, who was now changing into Yami. He held Zaku's shoulder and said, Yami put us in a Genjutsu and made us kill Kin. Get your head straight. Don't let him fool us like this again. What? It was a Genjutsu? That means that it was us that killed Kin? Zaku asked, looking back at Kin, who was now laying in a pool of blood. Anger started welling up inside Zaku's mind. He looked at Yami with bloodshot eyes and shouted, "I will kill you, asshole." Zaku was about to rush toward Yami, but Dosu stopped him. "Don't do it. We need to work together on this." Yami chuckled loudly and said, "Imagine, Zaku, how Kin must have felt when she saw her teammates stab her cruelly. She didn't even know why she died. Her last words were, 'Why, Zaku?'" Hearing Yami say this made Zaku more angry than he had ever been. Not just had he lost his teammate, but she died at the hands of her own teammates. Dosu didn't particularly care about Zaku and Kin. All that mattered to him was they have to be strong enough to support him in battle, but Zaku was different. Even though he and Kin had done plenty of cruel things, he had still grown fond of the girl, and now knowing that she died while thinking she was betrayed messed up his mind. "Zaku, don't listen to what he says. He is trying to play with your emotions," Dosu shouted. The last thing he needed now was Zaku going in blindly and dying. But this time Zaku couldn't control himself and rushed at Yami. "Tsk. I have no option but to go in with him," Dosu thought as he ran behind Zaku as well. He needed to catch Yami off guard with his sound jutsus so that he can inflict internal damage on Yami. Zaku, with two long kunais in his hand which were still covered in Kin's blood, was running madly toward Yami. Yami unsheathed his sword and rushed toward Zaku as well. He didn't coat the blade with any kind of chakra. He saw that Dosu was at some distance behind Zaku. He knew that Dosu planned to use Zaku only to waste time so that Dosu can use his own jutsu. Just as the kunais clashed with Yami's sword, a grin appeared on Dosu's face. This is what he wanted. "Yes, block him," Dosu said, but the very next second he saw Yami abandon his sword, making his sword fall on the ground, and Zaku go ahead due to the sudden loss of resistance. What is he doing? Dosu thought, and then he heard a loud noise of thousands of birds chirping. He saw a ball of lightning chakra concentrated in Yami's hand. Yami had let Zaku pass and was now heading straight towards Dosu. Chidori chi. The noisy and messy ball of lightning pierced Dosu's chest before he could do anything else. He couldn't even make up his mind whether to dodge it or block it or counter it. He felt his internal organs getting fried at an alarming rate. He knew that he had no chance of survival as the attack had hit the dead center in his chest. Yami pulled his hand out from Dosu's chest and let his limp body fall on the ground. He turned back and saw Zaku, who was blankly staring at the dead Dosu. Zaku's entire world had come crashing down on him in the past 5 minutes. His only mistake was underestimating Yami. He and his teammates thought that Yami had only progressed on the basis of his brothers' or teammates' help. They never thought that a 9-year kid could show them what fear truly means. Both of Zaku's teammates died without even putting up a fight. After the death of Kin, Zaku was angry, but after Dosu's death he was scared. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to move. He wanted to fight, but his hands refused to aim the kunai towards the monster in front of them. Zaku looked at Yami, who had activated his Sharingan again. He then saw both his dead teammates get up from the ground. Both of their eyes were hollow. Dosu had a big hole in his chest, while Kin had stab wounds on her body from which blood was still coming out. How can this happen?" Zaku said in a quivering voice. He looked at his two zombie teammates and then at Yami, who had a sly smile on his face. "It is you again. You monster, you are just showing me an illusion, this isn't real," Zaku said while gripping the kunai in his hand. "Do you think all this is an illusion?" the zombified Dosu asked. "Do you think you killing me is not real?" the zombified Kin asked. I didn't mean to kill you, Kin," Zaku said as he started to cry. "You killed me, Zaku," Kin said as she stretched her bloody hands towards Zaku. "I was killed because you couldn't stop him, Zaku," Dosu said as he touched his hollow chest. No. And no, you killed us, the zombified Dosu and Kin kept saying as they walked closer to their alive teammate. Chapter 128, End of the Second Test. Seeing Zaku's mind collapse due to all this, Yami thought, let's see how much I can push him into this deep hole. He went close to Zaku, who was now crouching on the ground with his eyes closed and his arms covering his head. Yami guided a wisp of his chakra into Zaku's chest and synced his heart rate to one of the segments mentioned in the Yuhi clan scroll. The segment represented the emotion of guilt, and it will increase based on how weak the victim's mind is and in what state it is. Zaku has already drowned in guilt and sadness. Wonder what will happen when I have given this little push. Yami thought. For the next few seconds, Zaku kept sobbing and muttering I am sorry, but then suddenly all of that stopped. Yami raised his eyebrows when he saw that. Zaku looked up. He lifted his hands and looked at the kunai for a few seconds and jabbed it in his own throat. Suicide, now that's something I never expected. I thought the max he will do is forget himself in madness and start destroying everything around himself. But still, I don't think the opponents I will face in the future will have such a fragile mind that I can drive them to commit suicide. Let's not underestimate the power of emotions. After all, the most powerful jutsu in the Naruto world is Talk no Jutsu, where Black Zetsu used it to incite a war while Naruto used it to unite all the villages. After a few seconds, Zaku bled out and fell to the ground just like his teammates. Yami wasn't sure whether the fate Team Dosu faced in the canon was the worst or the one that they faced today was. Yami then proceeded to devour the 3 sound genins with his devouring maw. Although it didn't provide anything notable, it was more than enough as compensation for making Yami late. Yami sensed that a few jonins were coming in his direction. He knew that they were here to find traces of Orochimaru. Yami dispersed into bats and left the forest. He knew that already more than enough time had passed for Gaara to clear the test, so his teammates and Team 7 won't have any problem completing the test. At the tower where all those who completed the second test entered, Team 7 and Team Dai just entered the tower and saw a couple of chunins and jonins standing in wait. One of the chunins walked ahead and asked both the teams to take out the Heaven and Earth scroll. After confirming that both the teams have the required scrolls to complete the test, they had them go into separate rooms and open the scrolls. In the next half an hour, a few more teams entered the tower completing the second test, including Team 8 and Team 10. As they all exited the tower, they met their Jonin sensei. The first one to jump in and ask questions was the most enthusiastic Jonin of Konoha, Might Guy. So tell me, how did the test go? Did you meet any strong opponents? Lee slumped his shoulders and said, no, Guy sensei, all the teams we encountered were weak. I didn't get to face even a single strong opponent. I hope I can enjoy a good fight in the next round of the exams. Before Lee could continue talking, Niji interjected and asked Guy sensei who completed the test first. Guy looked at the other jonins around him first and then back at Niji and said Team Gaara from the Hidden Sand Village was the one to complete the test first. They broke all previous records. Kurenai and Kakashi glanced at Yami to see his reaction, but to their surprise, Yami's expression didn't change a bit. I thought Yami would feel something after knowing that someone bested him, but looks like he doesn't even care. Makes sense though, Yami is adept in keeping his poker face intact even in difficult expressions. Kurenai thought. Kakashi raised his eyebrows, looking at Yami, who as always was standing in the back quietly. Yami, why did it take so much time for your team to complete this test? Kakashi asked. Karen, who was transformed into Yami, froze for a second. Everyone had told her the obvious questions that could be asked to Yami and how Yami is expected to answer, but this question wasn't any of them. Don't stutter or else everyone will know you are not Yami. Sakura prayed in her heart, and the basic rule she told Karen was never to change her expression too much and say things calmly in few words. Karen took a few seconds but then looked at Kakashi and said it wasn't worth my time, so I let Niji and Lee let loose for once. Kakashi nodded at that while the Team 7 and Team Daijin inside. They were just saved from being busted by Kakashi. You guys go home and rest. We will meet tomorrow for our usual practice and then come back here. Tomorrow is the last day of the second test. Kakashi said, and the two teams rushed out. As they came outside, Naruto came close to Sasuke and asked, what do we do now? Sasuke looked around and said, I will take her to the Uchiha compound just as we planned. She can stay there until you can talk and convince Hokage-sama. Just the thought of a girl staying with her Sasuke made Sakura jealous a bit, but she knew that this was an urgent and also the best solution to the current problem. While talking to Karen, she did drop a couple of hints that she loves Sasuke, and luckily the one thing that she found odd was that Karen seemed to be a little interested in Lee rather than Sasuke. After talking for a few more seconds, everyone separated and went back home. In Team 7's training ground, Kakashi was sitting on a rock reading Make-Out Tactics. While he was reading, he stopped and stashed the book in his back pocket and said, You took your time. Bats appeared in that area from different directions and the figure of Yami was formed. We have more pressing matters right now, Yami said as he slid his kimono a little enough for Kakashi to see the curse seal. Chapter 129, The Curious Anko. Someone else as the transformed Yami during such a big exam was a big thing, but Yami chucked the topic away like nothing. What does this matter? You speak of Yami? Yami didn't say anything and just showed Kakashi the curse seal. Kakashi's eyes widened seeing the curse seal. He had seen it on Anko as well as on some people he fought while trying to apprehend Orochimaru. He looked at Yami and asked, How did you get this? Yami covered the seal again with his kimono and said, I don't know who she was, but she was dressed as a Miss Genin. She even summoned snakes and stuff. I haven't met anyone who gave me a creepy feeling like her. It has to be Orochimaru, but why give Yami the curse seal? I need to get him to Hokage-sama and Anko ASAP. Kakashi thought. He didn't know that Orochimaru had come to the Hidden Leaf. If he had been informed about this, then he would have thought that the fake Yami outside the tower was Orochimaru himself trying to escape the forest. Let's go to Hokage-sama. We need to suppress the curse seal, Kakashi said and flickered out. He didn't even wait for Yami's opinion on this matter. This wasn't something that could be taken lightly. Kakashi had faced Orochimaru a few years ago, but he couldn't even move in front of the legendary Sannin. Kakashi knew how dangerous it was to be connected to Orochimaru in one way or the other. Hokage office. Hiruzen was smoking a pipe while checking the arrangements for the third test of the Chunin exam. What do you think about the performance of the Genins in the second test, Shikaku? Hiruzen asked. Shikaku, who was reading the reports, laid the papers on the table and said it was better than we expected, Hokage-sama. I think we need to put another round before the third test and cut the numbers in half. Hiruzen nodded and was about to say something, but then he heard a knocking sound. Surprisingly, this sound didn't come from the door but the window. As Hiruzen and Shikaku looked outside the window, they saw Kakashi and Yami standing. Shikaku went ahead and opened the window to let the two guests in. What is the matter, Kakashi? It has been a long time since you came from this entrance, Hiruzen said. He remembered that when Kakashi used to be in the Umbu, he used to come through the window to submit his reports. The matter was of utmost importance, Hokage-sama, Kakashi said while glancing at Yami. Seeing the serious expression on Kakashi's face and Yami with him, Hiruzen stood up and left his pipe down. Tell me, Kakashi. Show them, Kakashi said, looking at Yami. Yami nodded and showed Hiruzen and Shikaku the curse seal. This, Shikaku muttered. This is why he took the risk to come to the village, Hiruzen said in a grave tone. Kakashi was a little shocked as he heard that and said, Huh? You knew Orochimaru has entered the village, Hokage-sama? Kakashi thought that Hiruzen would be surprised to know about the presence of Orochimaru in the village, but it turned out that Hiruzen already knew. Hiruzen nodded and said, Yes, Anko made me aware of that. A few hours after the second test started, we found a few bodies killed in the same way Orochimaru had killed a few years ago. Other than that, the curse seal on Anko also reacted a little when she entered deep into the forest. I didn't know the curse seal reacts to Orochimaru in close proximity. Maybe it didn't react to Orochimaru but to my curse seal who was being attacked by my own chakra core, Yami thought as he listened to Hiruzen. Hokage-sama, I will go and call Anko here. We need to block the curse seal so that it won't affect Yami in any way, Shikaku said and left the office. After 10 minutes, Shikaku along with Anko, 2 jonins entered the office. She looked at Hiruzen and bowed. She then proceeded to look at Kakashi and finally her eyes landed on Yami. "Are you sure the person you saw was Orochimaru?" Anko asked Yami. She knew Yami was a genin, so she didn't treat him like a kid but like a shinobi. Yami shrugged and said, "I don't know who Orochimaru is nor how he looks. I just know a creepy girl from the hidden mist with an unusually long tongue bit me and gave me this tattoo. She also summoned a big brown snake." Makes sense. The new generation do not know much about Orochimaru. The only reason anyone would tell their kids about him was when mentioning the 3 legendary Sannin. Although this kid is strong, he is nowhere enough to escape from Orochimaru if he wants to kill Yami. Anko was lost in thought after what Yami said. Is there something that can be done about the curse seal in a short time? Kakashi asked. He knew that Yami would never agree to back out from the Chunin exam just because of the curse seal. He thought that Yami wouldn't know how dangerous the curse seal is nor how dangerous Orochimaru himself is. For now I will give you a scroll that contains the method to temporarily block the curse seal. It would be good enough for a month or 2, but remember not to overexert yourself or else the curse seal could react. Anko said while passing a scroll to Kakashi. She then looked at Yami and asked, did he say anything? Like what he wanted or why he was here? Yami shook his head and said, all he told me was this seal will give me more power and if I wanted more, I should come and find him. Anko banged her hand on Hiruzen's table as she heard this, always trying to recruit kids by giving them the hope of something or the other. You never change, Orochimaru. Anko muttered as she gritted her teeth. She then noticed that she had cracked Hiruzen's table. I am sorry, Hokage-sama. I couldn't control my emotions. Anko apologized. Chapter 130, Kakashi's Fuinjutsu. It's okay, Anko. I understand what you went through because of Orochimaru. Hiruzen said and then looked at Yami and said, Yami, I know you are smart enough not to fall for such an obvious lure. Many have suffered due to his greed for power and I don't know how long this will continue. Hiruzen knows that the only thing Orochimaru craves is the body of an Uchiha. He knows very well how much Orochimaru wants the Sharingan, but he still won't tell me. Hiruzen, you truly are someone I disgust. Keeping up the grandpa persona all the way. Yami thought as he looked at the fake smile Hiruzen had on his face. How can I ally with someone who attacked me when he opened his eyes on me? Hiruzen sighed as he heard that. The last thing he wanted was for Itachi's brother to go with Orochimaru under Hiruzen's watch and incur the wrath of Itachi. Hokage-sama, Anko, I will take Yami with me if there isn't anything else. Kakashi said. The next stage of the exam will be starting in a few hours and Kakashi wanted to apply a few seals to block the curse seal before that exam starts. Before Hiruzen could give his permission, Yami interrupted and said, I would like to give you a heads up. Naruto and the others have rescued a girl from the exam. She is from the Hidden Mist, but she was abused there along with her mother who died a horrible death. All the present adults turned toward Hiruzen to see his reaction. The girl did have a sad past, but hiding a shinobi from another village is not a simple thing to do and could have serious repercussions. Yami, even though what they have done is morally right, it could cause many problems in the long run. Hiruzen said while rubbing his chin. The girl's name is Karen Uzumaki. Yami said in a plain tone, but the word Uzumaki exploded like a bomb in the minds of the adults and it was quite evident on their faces. And Uzumaki? Are you sure? Kakashi was the first one to ask. Yami nodded and said yes, and she has red long hair as well. The figure of Kushina appeared in the minds of Hiruzen and Kakashi. I would like to meet her then. Hiruzen said. Right now she is living in the Uchiha compound. Mr. Kakashi, meeting her would be fine, but while the exams are going on, if you suddenly visit the Uchiha compound then people could get curious, Hokage-sama. Shikaku said. He didn't need to whisper as he knew everyone present in the room including Yami was mature enough to understand the gravity of the situation. Hokage-sama, please don't worry, I will take care of this matter. Kakashi said. Hiruzen nodded and said fine. Kakashi, make sure to verify her story and background and if things check out we will handle the rest. What about the rest of the team? Hiruzen looked at Yami while asking the question at the end. They met an unfortunate accident in the Forest of Death and couldn't make it out alive. Yami said. Kakashi and Shikaku raised their eyebrows as they heard this. What kind of unfortunate accident? Anko asked. She genuinely thought about what it could be me. Yami looked at Anko and smiled as he said me. They met me. Anko's eyes widened as she heard this. The smile on Yami's face that looked full of innocence a moment ago looked like the devil looking at her in a mocking tone. Kakashi had already figured this out when Yami said unfortunate accident, so he wasn't surprised by this. We will take your leave now, Hokage-sama, he said, and both he and Yami bowed toward Hiruzen and left. After they left, Anko looked at Shikaku and asked, I never thought a 9-year-old genin would make me feel fear. I agree, Anko, and that makes me wonder what route he will take in the future. Shikaku said, looking at the window through which Kakashi and Yami left. Hiruzen sat back at the table and started smoking his pipe again and said, Anko, study the curse seal more. We can't let Orochimaru get his hands on Yami. And at such a crucial time, the arrival of an Uzumaki is also a shock to me. Yami and Kakashi didn't leave the Hokage building but went somewhere underground in the same building through some hidden routes. Where are we going, Mr. Kakashi? Under the building, there are many smaller rooms meant for interrogation. These rooms are specially designed in such a way that jutsus can't leave outside the room. It is covered in fuinjutsu seals. Kakashi said while leading Yami into a small room. There was just a small light inside the room and the entire room had different seals made on them. Kakashi opened the scroll and after reading it for a few minutes, he said, come and sit down here in front of me. Yami obeyed what Kakashi told him without asking a lot of questions. Yami drew 2 concentric circles around Yami and placed a few kunais a little distance from each other in the circles. Remove your kimono. I need to write a few fuinjutsu seals on your body. Kakashi said, and Yami obediently removed his kimono. Kakashi slashed his palm and his finger with a kunai and left blood covering his finger. He then wrote something with his blood all over Yami's arm and back for the next few minutes. This is going to hurt a bit, he said and placed his palm on the curse mark. The blood-written fuinjutsu seal started moving and rotated around the curse seal, and after a few seconds when Kakashi removed his hand, then he saw that the entire curse seal was within a circle as if it was being blocked. Yami looked at the entrance and smiled as he thought in the canon, Orochimaru tracks Sasuke through the curse mark and has a small talk with Kakashi, but here Yami's chakra core had already blocked the curse seal, making it passive. Due to this, Orochimaru was unable to track nor flare up the curse seal whenever he wills. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in part 5. Peace.